There's a file buried somewhere in the deeper vaults of the
There's a place downtown and it's something and another.
Adeptus Ministorum.
That's loud.
The ecclesiarchy does not discuss it openly. The commissariat has sealed the relevant campaign reports. The Ordo Hereticus has on at least 2 separate occasions dispatched investigators to Armageddon with orders to observe and report on a single man.
Hopefully.
Those investigators returned with findings that were quietly filed, quietly forgotten, and quietly made impossible to retrieve without rank most scholars would never hold. That man is Sebastian Yarrick.
Sebastian?
He has been reported dead.
Black Butler?
Not once, not twice. The
That's
records,
a really good
such
anime.
as they are, suggest it has happened enough times that the Departamento Munitorum's own clerks simply stopped updating the relevant casualty ledgers, which is in itself bureaucratic admission that something about this particular commissar
I have
does
food.
not fit the standard mortality
And I don't have enough
model.
room.
And yet, he keeps coming back. He keeps coming back to Armageddon, and every single time he comes back, there's an orc incursion already waiting for him.
That's hot.
Not after him,
I
waiting
gotta clean
for
my
him.
fucking desk and shit.
Let's begin with the
Holy hell.
facts that are not disputed, at least not by anyone who has read the primary source documents rather than the sanitized campaign histories. Sebastian Yarrick was present at the Second War for Armageddon. He was a commissar of already advanced age by that point, scheduled for retirement on the very day the orc landings began. A man whose career had been defined by the kind of brutal competence that earns respect in the commissariat, while quietly making enemies in every other institution.
Hell yeah.
When Gazkul Mag Uruk Thraka's Wa descended on Armageddon in 941 M41, Yarrick was among the defenders. He held Hades' Hive. He held it after trained officers broke. Held it while the walls came apart, section by section, and the casualty reports grew too large for numbers to carry any weight. He held it long enough for relief to arrive, at a cost that the Imperial records describe with characteristic understatement, and that anyone with actual combat experience will read between the lines of without difficulty. During the fighting, Gazkul dispatched war boss Ugelhard to break Yarrick's resistance at Hades' Hive. Ugelhard's power claw took Yarrick's right arm at the elbow. Yarrick decapitated the war boss with his chainsword, pulled the claw from the corpse, and held it aloft until the orc charge broke. He then allowed himself the luxury of passing out. In the aftermath of the Second War, he had Ugelhard's claw modified and fitted as a prosthetic. He also replaced a left eye lost in a separate firefight during the campaign with a precision bionic, the Baal Eye, deliberately engineered to fire a laser beam, playing directly into the orc's superstition that his gaze could kill. The orc started flinching. Not from the Imperial firepower, of course. Orcs don't flinch from firepower in any meaningful way. They were flinching from Yarrick specifically. Greenskins who had torn through Hades' Hive outer defenses like paper began to hesitate when he was visible on the line. They reported to their own shamans that the old human had the evil eye. Ugelhard's claw, worn by the man who had killed Ugelhard, had acquired mythological status among the Greenskins before the campaign was finished. 3 years after the Second War ended, Yarrick came out of retirement to hunt Gazkul across the surrounding systems. What followed was nearly a decade of cat and mouse. Gazkul retreating, drawing Yarrick further from Armageddon, committing only to rearguard actions and never giving a decisive engagement. Then came Golgotha. What should have been a decisive Imperial victory became a trap. Gazkul's forces ambushed Yarrick's armored column, destroying the bulk of his force, and captured the commissar. He woke aboard an orc space hulk in chains above a pit, stripped of his claw and his Baal Eye, while Gazkul watched from the edge. Gazkul then let him go, not after ransom was paid or as part of a negotiated exchange. He provided Yarrick a shuttlecraft and released him with a line that his underlings found baffling. "Good enemies is hard to find." Yarrick returned to Golgotha with Adeptus Mechanicus support and the weapon called the Ordinatus Golgotha, routed the remaining orc forces, and left the world behind him. His Baneblade, the Fortress of Arrogance, crippled by a Stampa during the original engagement and abandoned when the Imperial line broke, remained on Golgotha under orc control. It would take a separate campaign, Operation Thunderstorm, fought by the 18th Army Group Exelon in the years before the Third War, to recover and repair the tank in time for Yarrick to take it back to Armageddon. Gazkul escaped to fight another day. That act of deliberate release is the fulcrum on which this entire analysis turns. 57 years after the start of the Second War came the Third. Yarick emerged from retirement again to coordinate Armageddon's defenses. The war ground into attrition with a decisive outcome. When Gazkul withdrew and the Black Templars under High Marshal Helbrecht prepared to pursue him, Yarick petitioned to join the Crusade. Helbrecht agreed. Yarick went after Gazkul across the void. They cornered the Orc warlord's flagship Kilrekka at the Battle of the Haunted Gulf. Gazkul escaped into the warp and began his Great Wa in earnest. Yarick was last credibly reported somewhere in the dark between engagements. The Divisio Mortis circulated a report during the Era Indomitus stating he was dead. The Bell of Lost Souls on Terra told for him. The cause of death was notably never specified. No body was produced. No engagement was cited. It was paperwork. The Imperium is very good at producing paperwork.
Hell
And
yeah.
then Armageddon started burning again, and the Orcs were waiting.
Hell yeah.
What is a Wa? Most Imperial scholars who address the Orc menace begin and end their psychic analysis with a note that Orcs possess a collective Gestalt consciousness, partially rooted in the warp. The Psychona classifies it. The Librarius acknowledges it. Nobody seems particularly interested in the full implications of what it means. Orcs are not merely physically prolific. They are psychically prolific. Every Orc is a minor psyker in the most technical sense possible, producing warp energy simply by existing, simply by believing things. The Orc mech boys, those greenskin engineers who cobbled together machinery that should not function by any principle of physics the Adeptus Mechanicus can recognize, are producing technology that runs on belief. Orc vehicles painted red travel measurably faster than identical vehicles left unpainted. This has been tested and confirmed. It's suppressed information because the implications for materium physics are profoundly unsettling, but the finding holds. The paint does not change the engine. The Orc belief that red vehicles go faster is so collectively powerful, so reinforced by thousands of years of greenskin culture, that the warp energy produced by that belief literally alters physical outcomes in the materium. The vehicle goes faster because the Orcs believe it goes faster. That is a documented psychic phenomenon, not a metaphor or folk wisdom. The Imperium acknowledges it in classified reports and then declines to examine the full implications because those implications are deeply inconvenient. A Wa is not simply a military campaign. It's the amplification of this collective Orc psychic field to a scale that has measurable warp effects. When a Wa reaches sufficient size, when enough Orcs are moving together towards sufficient violence, the collective belief of every single one of the Orcs begins to shape reality in their immediate vicinity. Warp storms form around Wa events. Psychers in the path of a Wa report nightmares and pressure. The materium thins in ways that have no explanation outside of massive coordinated psychic output. The Orcs believe things into being, collectively at scale. And for over a century the Orcs of Armageddon have believed, with the absolute and total conviction that only creatures without doubt are capable of, that Sebastian Yarick cannot die. From a suppressed Ordo Xenos field report, clearance level not reproducible here. The subject greenskins, when questioned through approved Deathwatch interrogation methodology, expressed a consistent belief that the human they designated as Old Baali, or the Great Foe, cannot be permanently killed. When pressed on the mechanism of this, several subjects attempted to explain that he simply comes back because he's too mean to stay dead. When this was flagged as an unsophisticated explanation, the interrogating librarian noted in his addendum that the Orcs may be describing a psychic truth in only vocabulary available to them. This addendum was removed from the main report at the request of the supervising inquisitor. It is reproduced here in full. So we know what living saints are, or rather we know that the ecclesiarchy's official account of what living saints are. They're individuals of extraordinary faith who upon death are returned to life by the Emperor's direct intercession. The warp, which is shaped by the psychic output of sentient minds, responds to the accumulated belief and devotion of billions of Imperial citizens. When that belief is focused sufficiently, when the emotional weight of an entire civilization's faith is aimed at a specific individual, the warp manifests that belief in the materium. The person returns, sometimes changed, sometimes radiant, always inconvenient for anyone who preferred they stay dead. Saint Celestine is the most documented example. She has died and returned so many times that the ecclesiarchy has developed a formal theological framework to explain why each death is different from the previous death, and therefore does not contradict the previous return. The theology is, not to put too fine a point on it, strained, but the mechanism is broadly agreed upon. Massive collective belief focused on a single individual manifests that individual back into physical existence. Now consider what the orcs of Armageddon believe about Yarick. They call him Old Baali, in some warbands simply the Great Foe. In the ones that have been fighting on Armageddon the longest, whose oldest boys were grots during the Second War, the mythology is calcified into something closer to religious cosmology. The Yumi who killed Ugelhard and wore his claw. The old human whose eyes burnt through the dark. The one who cannot be killed because to kill him would be the end of the fight. And the fight cannot end because the fight is the entire point of existence. That last element might be the most important. For an orc, the Wa is not a means to an end. It's not a conquest for the sake of territory or resources. The Wa is the purpose. Violence is the purpose. The worthy enemy is therefore not merely an obstacle to be overcome, but a sacred feature of the cosmology. A being whose continued existence is necessary for the Wa to have meaning. A Wa without a worthy enemy is directionless. Killing without challenge is eventually boring even for orcs. Gazkul, who is by every available measure the most psychically active war boss in living memory, has built an entire theology around the concept of the worthy enemy. His God War mythology, the framework he has used to draw orcs from across the galaxy towards Armageddon and then beyond it, requires a counterpart. It requires someone on the other side who can match the scale of what the Wa represents. And the orcs have chosen Yarick for that role. One old commissar with a dead eye and a dead hand. The Imperium, the Space Marines, the God Emperor sitting silent on his throne. None of them fill the role the way Yarick does. The greenskin cosmology has no use for a pantheon. It wants a single great foe, personal and enduring. One opponent whose survival is proof that the fight is still worth having. The collective psychic weight of every orc who has ever set foot on Armageddon, every grot who has carried ammunition across Hades Hive's rubble fields, every mech who has heard the story of Old Baali and his killing gaze, every warboss who has rallied a mob by invoking the name of the great foe, all of that belief is pointing at Yarick. All of it says he cannot die. All of it says he will return. And he does. Now we arrive at the part of this analysis that the Ministorum and the Commissariat would both very much prefer did not exist. If Yarick is a living saint, and the evidence that he functions as one in the practical observable sense of repeatedly returning from circumstances that should have produced a permanent death is difficult to dismiss, then the question of the mechanism matters enormously. Living saints in the official ecclesiarchy account are powered by imperial faith, by belief in the God Emperor, by the psychic weight of humanity's devotion focused through the warp back into the materium. The faith of billions sustains them. The Emperor's will directs them. The whole process is, at least as officially described, an entirely human and entirely Imperium internal phenomenon. But Yarick is not beloved by billions of Imperial citizens in the way that Celestine is. He's respected. He's feared by the enemy in the way that capable officers are feared. There are shrines to him on Armageddon, and these are not nothing. But Yarick has never attracted the scale of Imperial devotion that the ecclesiarchy's model requires. He's a commissar. The commissariat is not the sort of institution that produces saints in the Ministorum's preferred emotional register. Commissars shoot people. People respect commissars. People do not typically build them into a theology of miraculous intercession. The faith pointed at Yarick from the Imperial side is genuine but modest. The faith pointed at Yarick from the Orc side is overwhelming. Hundreds of thousands of orcs across 3 major wars and however many smaller incursions the records either do not capture or have suppressed. All of them believing, with the force of a species that literally makes reality bend around its beliefs, that this man is unkillable, that he will return, that he is the great foe and the great foe is eternal, because the Wa is eternal and the Wa requires him. The warp responds to the emotional weight of sentient belief. The orcs are a species that uses warp energy through belief as a matter of course, as a biological and cultural baseline. Their collective conviction in Yarick's immortality dwarfs, in raw psychic terms, whatever the Armageddon population's faith in him has produced. Which means that if Yarick is being returned to life by the warp, if the same mechanism that produces living saints is at work here, then the power source is not the Emperor's will filtered through human faith. It's Orc belief. Yarick may function as a saint of the God Emperor. He may act in the Emperor's interests, serve the Imperium faithfully, fight its enemies without reservation. All of that can be entirely true, and he may still be sustained at the psychic level by the collective religious conviction of the species he spent his entire life fighting. Let's return to Golgotha. Return to the moment Gazkul let him go.
What?
Gazkul Mag Uruk Thraka is not an ordinary war boss. He is, by any reasonable assessment, the most dangerous Orc warlord in the current era of Imperial history. The Orcs themselves speak of him as a prophet, as the instrument of Gork and Mork's divine will, as the being who will lead the Great Wa that will engulf the stars in green fire. He has had direct warp visions. Makari, his perpetually recurring Grot banner-bearer, has survived circumstances that Grots are not built to survive, and exists in ways that the Ordo Xenos have not been able to satisfactorily explain. Gazkul's entire theological worldview emerged from a bolter round that destroyed his skull on the world of Urk. The subsequent surgery performed by the Orc pain boy Mad Doc Grotsnick, who rebuilt that skull in adamantium, and the visions of Gork and Mork that followed Gazkul's recovery from the operating table. He emerged from that experience speaking of gods and prophecy, rallying Orcs from systems away. Gazkul is plugged into the Orc collective psychic field in ways that even the Ordo Xenos does not fully understand. When he captured Yarick aboard the Space Hulk and released him, the explanation offered in most Imperial campaign summaries is tactical arrogance. That the release of the Imperium's most prominent Armageddon defender was a statement. That the fight had no meaning unless the best opponent was present for it. This is plausible. It's also incomplete. Gazkul, operating at the intersection of Orc psychic belief and warp awareness, would have understood on some instinctive level what his species' collective belief was building around the figure of the great foe. He would have understood, in the inarticulate but functionally reliable way the Orc shamans understand things, that Yarick's death in chains aboard a Space Hulk, no witness, no spectacle, no Wa to absorb and amplify the deed, would not produce the satisfying termination a lesser war boss might expect. Killing Yarick there might have simply spent the stored warp energy of generations of Orc belief in a single moment, burned it off, reset the architecture, and then left Yarick dead in a way that had no grandeur, and left the Wa without its counterpart, which is, from Gazkul's perspective, worse than leaving him alive. The Great Wa needs the Great Foe. That is the internal logic of the cosmology Gazkul has constructed. The God War requires two sides. Remove Yarick from it permanently, in the dark of a Space Hulk cargo bay, and the sacred conflict becomes just violence, which is satisfying but not divine. Consider what Yarick did after Golgotha. He did not retire. He did not accept a ceremonial posting. He rebuilt his forces, requested the recovery of his Baneblade from Orc-held Golgotha, a campaign that cost the 18th Army Group the better part of 3 divisions to accomplish. And when Gazkul returned to Armageddon decades later to launch the Third War, Yarick was there waiting for him, and then, when Gazkul fled after the Third War, Yarick crossed the void after him, boarding a Black Templar's crusade to pursue an Orc warlord across hostile space at an age that Imperial medicine cannot adequately explain. And ask yourself, is this the behavior of a man acting freely? Ask yourself whether it resembles the behavior of a saint who cannot rest while the enemy that calls them still draws breath. There is a question that the campaign histories treat as strategic and that deserves to be treated as theological. Why Armageddon? Richer worlds exist, worlds with more material value, more defensible approaches, more Imperial forces to provide the scale of resistance a Wa seeks. Armageddon is a heavily defended industrial world, and industrial worlds carry material value that Orcs can theoretically exploit. But Gazkul has never shown particular interest in exploitation. The Wa does not strip mine. The Wa burns and fights and then looks for the next thing to burn and fight. And yet, it keeps returning to Armageddon. The Second War, the Third War, and now again. The Orcs are not there because of Armageddon's industrial output. They're there because Yarick is there, or because they believe Yarick will be there, which in Orc psychic mechanics amounts to the same thing. The belief calls to the Wa responds to the call. The warp between Armageddon and whatever staging point Gazgul currently occupies is thick with the echoes of 2 wars and 100 years of accumulated belief. Greenskin and human both, pressed into the fabric of the immaterium like a scar that never fully heals. And then, Yarick returns. Every time a new incursion builds over Armageddon at some point in the campaign's early stages, before the full weight of Imperial response has been organized, the reports begin to surface. He was
Boy's
dead.
fast as
He was
fuck.
gone. There were death notices, campaign summary records indicating his last known position under conditions that did not suggest survival. And then he's on Armageddon. The Orcs know before the Commissariat does. The Orcs always know before anyone does. Because in some meaningful psychic sense, they called him. Extract from Field Report, Armageddon Orbital Station, date unclear, classification level partially redacted. Greenskin Vox intercepts are consistent across multiple warbands. They're not preparing for an invasion, they're preparing for a welcoming. The phrasing in Orcish is not translatable in any direct, meaningful way, but the Deathwatch interpreter describes it as something approaching anticipation of a return visit from an honored enemy. We've not yet been able to determine who they are expecting. The pattern of the build-up suggests they believe the answer is obvious. The Ecclesiarchy's position on Yarick is one of the more interesting exercises in institutional evasion in recent Imperial history. He's been nominated for official sainthood at least twice by factions within the Ministorum who believe his survival record and his performance on Armageddon qualify him by any reasonable criteria. Both nominations have been quietly shelved. The official explanation, to the extent that there is one, is procedural. Commissars are not Ecclesiarchy personnel. Sainthood is an Ecclesiarchy designation. The Commissariat and the Ministorum have different chains of authority. In granting Commissariat officers the status of Imperial Saints sets complicated precedents. This is a real concern. It's just not the actual reason. The actual reason, or at least the most likely actual reason based on what investigation of this topic has turned up, is that the Ecclesiarchy's own theologians have run the analysis. They have looked at the pattern of Yarick's returns and the pattern of Wa buildups of Armageddon. And at least some of them have noticed what this document is arguing explicitly. They've noticed that the timing is wrong for purely Imperial faith to be doing the work. They've noticed that the Orc belief architecture around Yarick is enormous, structurally similar to the faith architecture around officially canonized saints, and that the Psychona's models for how living saints function do not cleanly exclude the possibility of alien belief serving as the power source. To canonize Yarick officially is to raise the question formally. To raise the question formally is to produce an answer that the Ecclesiarchy does not have any institutional framework for handling. A saint is a servant of the Emperor, interceded for by the Emperor's grace, powered by the faith of the faithful. A saint whose miraculous sustenance is provided by Orc religious conviction is something the Lectitio Divinatis has no chapter for. It's easier to simply not canonize him. It's easier to acknowledge his service without asking too precisely what the mechanism of his continued service actually is. It's the kind of institutional wisdom that the Ecclesiarchy has developed over 10,000 years of managing the gap between what is theologically convenient and what is actually happening. The Ordo Hereticus notices things. That is, after all, the point of them. There are at minimum 2 confirmed instances of inquisitorial observation teams being dispatched to Armageddon with the remits that included Yarick specifically. The remit language in both cases is available in fragments through records and survived the archiving process in incomplete form. Both use language consistent with an investigation of potential psychic contamination in a high-profile Imperial figure. Both were concluded without formal charges being brought. Both conclusion reports are sealed at a level that requires specific writ access that this investigation has not been able to obtain. What can be inferred from the visible fragments is suggestive rather than definitive. The investigations did not result in Yarick's disappearance, his death at inquisitorial hands, or his quiet removal from active duty. He continued to serve. He continued to return. Whatever the Inquisitors found, they did not find it actionable in the way that most Ordo Hereticus findings are actionable. There are several possible explanations for this. One is that they found nothing. that the phenomenon has a mundane explanation, and that Yarick simply has statistically remarkable luck combined with a constitution that refuses to quit. This is the explanation that requires the fewest difficult conclusions. It's also the explanation that requires ignoring the most evidence. Another possibility is that they found something and concluded it was manageable. Whatever's sustaining Yarick is operating in service of the Imperium's interests regardless of the power source. A saint is functionally a saint. A warrior who returns from death to continue fighting the enemies of humanity is useful, whatever the metaphysics. The Inquisition is, under certain circumstances, capable of pragmatism. A third possibility is that they found something and concluded that there was no mechanism by which the situation could be changed. Yarick cannot be killed except by the orcs ceasing to believe in him, and the orcs will not stop believing in him as long as the Wa continues, and the Wa will not end while there's an Armageddon to return to. You cannot counter the warp energy of a million screaming greenskins with a commissariat execution order. You cannot file paperwork that rescinds a mythological role in a species-wide psychic gestalt. The investigators may have looked at the situation, understood that nothing could be done, and written their conclusions accordingly. But what does Yarick know? This is where the theory becomes really interesting if you follow it far enough. Yarick has had ample time to notice the pattern. He's not a young man, or rather he has not been a young man for a very long time. And whatever is sustaining him through decades of war has also, presumably, sustained the kind of intelligence and observation that made him effective enough to warrant the orcs' attention in the first place. He has watched the Wa return to Armageddon. He has heard the reports of his own death and ignored them. He has seen Gazkul release him when killing him would have been straightforward. There is no public record of Yarick expressing any opinion about the mechanism of his continued survival. The Commissariat does not encourage philosophical speculation in its officers, and Yarick in particular does not appear to have been a man given to written reflection on metaphysical questions. What documents exist from his hand are operational: orders, assessments, campaign reports, the occasional annotation on intelligence summaries. But there is one document, a single letter written to an unnamed correspondent, found in fragmentary archive apparently maintained by someone close to Yarick's command staff. The letter is undated. It's not clear if it was ever sent. Most of it deals with administrative matters that are now so far in the past they carry no useful information. Toward the end, there are 3 sentences that the archivist who located the fragment flagged without comment. I have long since stopped asking why I'm still here when better men are not. I no longer believe the answer reflects well on me, or on the nature of the thing keeping me upright. But the orcs are still there, and that means I am still needed, and I've never particularly cared what paid the bill as long as the work gets done. It could be taken as a tired soldier's commentary on survival guilt. It could be the reflection of a man who suspects, without fully articulating, that his continued existence is downstream of something he does not fully understand and does not fully endorse. Or it could be the most honest assessment of his own condition that Sebastian Yarick has ever put in writing. Reports are now circulating through military and intelligence channels describing a renewed orc buildup in Armageddon's surrounding space. Significant greenskin force aggregation, movement patterns consistent with the intentional convergence rather than random Wa drift. Evidence of coordination among warbands that would not normally coordinate. Multiple forces moving together towards a specific target in organized fashion represents a Wa with clear intent. A Wa with clear intent has purpose, and the purpose, as established by the mythology the orcs have built around Armageddon across 3 prior wars, is the great foe. He was dead. Reports said he was dead. The campaign records were updated. The Commissariat filed the relevant documentation. There were presumably memorials. There are always memorials. He arrived on Armageddon to find a commissar already at the Vox, broadcasting the order to withdraw. The orc buildup was too great, the argument went. The world could not be held. Imperial forces should fall back and cede the ground. Yarick shot him. There would be no retreat. That was the declaration, delivered standing over the body of the commissar who had called for one. Delivered to every Vox receiver in range on a world that had just been told its greatest champion was dead. The orcs were coming. Armageddon would hold. The old man with the claw and the burning eye had returned, and he'd arrived at the precise moment the defense was on the edge of dissolving. Not a moment too early, not a moment too late. The Orc Vox intercepts from the same window, filtered through Deathwatch translation assets, shows something the receiving analyst did not know how to categorize. The Greenskins were not responding to an invasion. They were responding to a welcoming. The framing in whatever passes for theological language among Orc warbands was celebration. The great foe had come back. Old Baeli was here to give them a proper fight.
Hell
In
yeah.
some meaningful psychic sense, they called him. And somewhere in the thick warp scarring over Armageddon,
In the
pressed
thick of
into
it.
the Immaterium by 100 years and 3 apocalyptic wars, and the absolute conviction of hundreds of thousands of greenskin minds, there is a shape that corresponds to Sebastian Yarrick. That shape is still active, still fed by the belief of the beings who created it, still putting the old man back into the fight whether he wants to come or not. The Orcs are not wrong to expect him. That's the terrible part of this. The Orcs are not wrong. Sebastian Yarrick functions as a living saint. He returns from death. He appears at the moment he is most needed. He cannot be permanently removed from the field. He serves the Imperium with the single-minded ferocity that the Ecclesiarchy attributes to divine purpose. The mechanism sustaining him is not the Emperor's grace reflected in the faith of his subjects. It's Orc belief. Collective, species-wide, psychically potent Orc belief, maintained across generations of greenskin culture, built into the mythology of the Wa itself. The Orcs who believe Sebastian Yarrick cannot die are, in the most literal sense available to the warp's mechanics, correct. He cannot die. They made him unable to die. The same species that paints its vehicles red to make them faster has, without knowing it, painted one old commissar with the same brush. And now he goes and cannot be stopped. He is the Imperium's saint. He is also, if this analysis is correct, a creation of the Orc Wa. Not a servant of the Wa, not a traitor or a compromised figure. He serves the Imperium absolutely and has done so without wavering for his entire career. But he serves it on a framework of existence that the Orcs built for him, with the energy the Orcs continue to provide, in a role that the Orcs defined when they named him the Great Foe and decided he was eternal. The Wa does not know it's keeping him alive. The Wa does not reason in those terms. The Wa believes, and believing is enough. And the warp does not ask who is doing the believing before it acts on the accumulated weight of it. And so the old man comes back. He always comes back. He will keep coming back for as long as there's a Wa over Armageddon, and a greenskin anywhere in the galaxy who knows the name Old Baeli and does not doubt for a single second that the great foe is still out there somewhere, mean as death, impossible to put down for good. The Imperium calls what Yarrick does faith. The Orcs call what they do belief. At the level of the warp, there is no difference. That's the part nobody's supposed to know.
Swag. Sanguinius. That's my dog. Fucking love Sanguinius.
After 1 year of living in Epstein's dungeon, I finally
What?
returned. To my luck, Baki just dropped a new season. Now, unlike the previous ones, which were about crackheads causing chaos throughout Gotham City, and Yujiro beating on his son Baki in an alcoholic-induced rage, this one is somehow more deranged. Cause Miyamoto Musashi is in this. Now, why am I trembling in my boots? I don't know guys, it might be because this is the only guy able to run all the fades of Baki characters. He's not only the greatest swordsman, but at the time, he was recognized by the dead and the living as the #1 under the sun. And this is no fairy tale. At one point, in our peaceful TikTok-infested world, there was a guy who held that title. Now, he's in Baki, about to humble the unhumbleable. Baki starts his day off sweating like he just got out of a sauna full of morbidly obese people. He's on his daily walk. Not any daily walk. He's walking down 200 steps like he just gave up on life. Just as I thought he was about to die, he ends up yawning and catching himself. We get a cut to a guy who I thought was Jack Kama. Then I thought was McGregor. But this dude right here is none of that. He's a whole different UFC fighter, and he's tired of fighting people off the streets of America. Before he can retire though, his opponent tries to punch him, but he lands the penis counter, then decides to hug it out like gentlemen. Actually, No, he just slams this dude on his neck and beats the living breaks off him. So he doesn't return to his family. Since he's tired of facing weaklings, what better place to find worthy opponents than to show up right in front of Tokigawa? This man right here saw the fight between Baki and his father under Facebook's domestic abuse session. Baki is the strongest creature right now, so Atlas here, not McGregor, gets asked, "When are you ready,
Wait, what
boy?"
the fuck?
And he says, "Oh yeah, I'm ready. I bet." Before he knows it, he ends up in the arena, unprepared and already sweating. When he sees Baki walking through, he begins wondering if this is really Baki? Cause this fool is small as hell. But then bro sees the muscles, the scars. Yeah, he might just get folded. It gets bad enough for him to start seeing demons. Luckily, the ref stops Atlas from trolling himself. So once he walks to his corner, people begin praying for him like, "Lord Jesus, please protect this man and give him plot armor. He's facing the main character." Baki's already jumping, and once the match starts, bro ends up in retirement. Talking about GG, bro, I quit. I'm also confused what happened. But turns out, this fool tried to give Baki his feet. Baki said nah, so he tried to sucker punch him, only to get his hairline grabbed and pulled back to the Stone Age. That was pretty much how he ended up getting one of the best naps in his life. Now on the other side of things, we meet a gremlin who leads Tokigawa and whoever this is down an elevator. I don't know what this place is, but it's pretty high tech. Once the elevator opens, a baldy man greets them. Now, while Tokigawa and the baldy man is making out in the back, the guy tells him to lock in. Eventually we end up where the dead samurai lies. This is Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary swordsman. This was a place made to conduct research on cloning methods, and Tokigawa with his massive pockets is funding all of this so he can resurrect legends from the past. Baki, who is at home, laying on his cozy bed, begins hearing things. He forgot to take his pills, and without a worthy opponent, he is feeling schizophrenic. Baki's not the only one feeling this though. On Katsumi's side, he's training with the Aikido master. Now, Shibikawa lets him get a hit in, but eventually they settle down to have a therapy session. Since Kasumi here has also been hearing things, his father Doppo too, and the homeless man, and the side character as well. Even this transgender, this drug addict, and the greatest waifu in the world. Wait, Biscuit Oliver too? And also, Hanema's the only one taking their meds. All of these dudes are feeling really uncomfortable. It's probably because Miyamoto Musashi is coming. Now, in the secret science dungeon, everyone is locked in. Like, look at this man, pure focus. Now, there's a lot of sciencey stuff here, and I'm not really sure that all of you cavemen can actually understand any of this, because you guys just entered the Stone Age. So I'll give you a simple rundown. Huh? Baki, logic, poke hole and egg, get tadpole. Oh crap, I just gotta add. Anyway, all of this will make Musashi come back somehow. Now, Baki is aura farming and beating on side characters. He is completely bored because he has no challengers. The same goes for the other Baki characters, who are also doing their best to cope. But the most absurd one is probably Doppo, who is now addicted to taking showers. I can't blame him. But what I can blame is Jack Hama, who is trying to become a real-life space marine through surgery. Someone please stop this man. He's trying to become an 8-foot-tall monster so he can hype mock Yujiro Hama. Now, back in the science lab, the scientists are now giving birth to Miyamoto Musashi into the real world. This scene looked like something out of Alien vs Predator. One scientist instantly begins giving him pedicures. Once he's done, they start staring at his junk like, "Oh my lord. This is him. This is the man who's gonna finally humble these Baki characters." Now, we're chilling with Hanayama, who is bored out of his mind. Despite being a few days ago, he was held at gunpoint. But the one who was terrified was not him, but the guy pointing the gun at him. So he grabbed the dude's hand to make sure he didn't miss. Then when the dude didn't pull the trigger, he crushed it. All of this didn't excite him at all. So he began wondering if giving Yujiro a booty call would fix his boredom. Hanayama eventually meets up with Tokigawa to ask for a fight. Tokigawa takes him to the backyard to ask if he's really that down bad, or did he forget that he just got folded by the booty warrior in one shot many seasons ago. Hanayama doesn't care though, so Tokigawa relents and said, "Fine, I'll make sure he knows you want your teeth clapped." In the science room, the entire room is absolutely in despair because while they brought Musashi's body back to life, Musashi was still dead in the mind. So after a bit of arguing, Tokigawa says something super unscientific. The reason why Musashi is still dead is due to
What
So-
the fuck?
So he brings up his hot sister. She can bring souls back. None of the scientists believe him, but he reassures them that she's the only one who can do this. His sister, who's currently being a con artist, is on the streets scamming idiots over yenis. They believe she can actually speak to any soul. So another man walks up and asks to speak to Osama bin Laden. Now, after this Oscar award acting skill, a young man in a blue suit sits down and says she's bullcrapping. So she decides to prove that she's not by summoning his dead father. Once she manages, Bro begins getting flamed by his father from the dead. But then he says, "Psych! My father's not dead, and you're full of shit!" Now that you guys understand how credible she is, she turns up at the lab thanks to the recommendation from Tokigawa. The scientists there are not buying any of her so-called credibility, so they begin trying to kick her out. Then she begins praying and calling upon the most legendary soul, this guy's grandpa. Brother gets flamed by his grandpa for the next few minutes, and it's really awkward to watch two family members argue, so let's go check on Hanayama. He is in the streets trying to get his face remodeled by his crush, Yujiro, who is now in front of him, wearing shades at nighttime because he's him. While Tokigawa is gushing, watching with binoculars from the back. The two eventually go for a walk. Hanayama eventually brings up the domestic abuse between Yujiro and Baki. But Yujiro isn't here to talk about that, so he flicks his glasses up and
Where y'all
crushes it.
going?
He lets Hanayama know that he isn't here to explain why he's a drunk alcoholic. He's here cause Hanayama called him to get his cheeks clapped, and he never refuses a booty call. A man suddenly asked for an autograph, so Yujiro gave it to him in Yujiro fashion. Now that things are all clear, kinda, it's time to get down. Both Yujiro and Hanayama are ready. Hanayama, who never trained, swings his body back like bro's about to sniff his own ass before launching the most powerful punch from the depths of hell. A punch so hard Yujiro's face starts smoking. When the smoke finally passes, Yujiro had the most devious look on his face. Hanayama doesn't wait though. He swings so hard, people feel the gust. When Hanayama threw his third punch, he was unable to even touch Yujiro. So he decides to lock in and try to nibble on Yujiro instead, only to get slapped in the face. Yujiro was fast, so fast he had pulled his hands out before Hanayama could throw another punch. When he grabbed Hanayama's face, Hanayama was sent flying, and in one hit, he was sent through a grocery store. The scene looks absolutely devastating, like Saitama was here. But Hanayama was actually pretty happy that he got his cheeks clapped. Now, Masashi is in the lab, unprotected, and this old lady's here, and she's about to get down on him. But don't worry, Baki decided to have some mercy on your mental health, so she instead begins praying and summoning Musashi's soul. Then, suddenly jumps up like a freak, standing like the great swordsman, Musashi himself. The scientists are still skeptical about this and think that she just needs to be put in a retirement home. But then she walks up to Musashi. Tokigawa decides to leave, cause he does not want to see what happens next. And this nasty ass! What the hell? Someone stop this thing. No. Stop. Oh no!
Ew.
I'm sorry guys. I lied about Baki wanting to save your mental health. They wanted to give you nightmares. Someone stop this freaky ass lady. The scientists, who were freaking out, suddenly noticed the monitors beeping. Then Musashi's body starts changing, scars appear, his face morphs, his body completely changes. When this nasty ass lady finally stops slobbering all over bro's lips, bro wakes up like, I know damn well you didn't, old hag. She gets grabbed and starts freaking dying. Musashi notices the scientists as well, so he throws her at them. He was then gone, behind them, standing there like he was about to butcher them like cattle. But then he turned out to be smarter than most people. He had questioned all of them. Once done, Tokigawa walked over to ask him for a fight. But you know, Musashi isn't exactly a pervert, so he doesn't want to fight nude. So they bring him some clothes and he gets fitted in peak fashion. Now, he's ready for a fight. Also, by the way, we also get to see the famous thumb holding this from Baki, and it's a lot more impressive than I originally thought. Cause he rose from that position and started walking on his thumbs. So the people who said they recreated this, I don't even think they recreated the whole thing, they just recreated the pose. Pretty cool, but Musashi isn't looking too cool over here. He's actually scared of whatever hell this modern day has become. He was overwhelmed by the city, the lights, the sky, everything. When he stood in the streets,
Almost
he
dropped one of
felt
my
how
meds.
uncomfortable this new era was. Even the ground felt different. He looked to the giant building, noticing how absolutely enormous it is. The people, They were also different. Tokigawa begins showing him around, and by the end of it, Musashi looks even more deformed than usual. He was super confused. Mankind progressed beyond what he could handle. No longer did he belong here. So he asked Tokigawa to take him where he belongs. Musashi was taken to an arena where people get crippled. The ground here was like sand, but with a lot of teeth in it. It wasn't from children playing, but from battles. Musashi here felt at home. A man suddenly began approaching. Not any man. A man who was old and carrying a sword. An unrivaled, undefeated swordsman. The #1 in the world. Now, Miyamoto was now being introduced to the #1 swordsman in the world, who noticed that Miyamoto had already cut him in half. When Tokigawa the homosexual began glazing at him like he was that guy, he began profusely sweating, knowing that he could not back that up. Eventually, Tokigawa noticed that he was nervous, so he decided to ask who this inbred, deformed man was. But Tokigawa didn't say anything, instead saying, "Don't worry, sweetheart, don't worry." So brother just decides to forfeit before he could get folded. Miyamoto says, "Hey, good job giving up. Did you notice how I just violated you and cut you with my bare hands?" The two here could not believe it. What happened was just in pure imagination, but the swordsman could still feel it. So Musashi asked for the dude's sword. The man gives it up without a problem, and now Musashi was at home. This sword in his hand, he could tell though, was one for a twink. So he decides to snatch both swords from this man. Tokigawa then suddenly asked for a demonstration. So this demon responded with,
Seaman demon.
"Who wants to die?" Luckily he was joking and swung the man's sword so hard that both swords completely
I could
shattered.
swing my sword,
Miyamoto then asked,
my diamond
"Where the hell
sword,
did he
sword."
get this? Walmart?" The guy crashes out over his broken swords, but gets told that this is Miyamoto Musashi. He doesn't really care. Tokigawa begins watching Boku no Pico together with Baki.
Ew.
But Baki starts getting one of his episodes, imagining that there's a demon behind that door. Eventually, to stop this man from going berserk, Tokigawa brought Musashi into the room instead of his usual meds. Baki was completely shocked when he saw him, and with one glance, he could tell that this was Miyamoto Musashi. Without any further ado, this brother suddenly does a ballerina flip. He had just avoided one of Musashi's invisible strikes. Musashi decided then to bring Baki outside so they could have a proper fight. Both of them were about to fight unarmed. Well, aside from Miyamoto, who was now playing pretend by holding invisible swords, Baki was then cut in a split second. This man in front of him could cut anyone even without a blade. He was the weapon. While Baki is processing that, Tokigawa and Musashi begin talking about how Baki is the strongest in the world. Musashi doesn't exactly believe any of this and calls bullcrap, so Baki tries to kick him, only to get his ankles grabbed and picked up like an insect. Musashi gets a bit cocky, so Baki was able to throw another kick, but he controls his ankle, so the kick misses. Musashi is now crushing Baki's leg, and then pulls him back, like this. Oh no. This dude Musashi swung Baki with all his might into the concrete. Rest in peace. Well, Baki does wake up with migraines. I'm happy he didn't die. He remembered that he had just faced someone who could run his fade. This made him super happy and excited. Baki eventually walked outside just as Miyamoto was about to do some training with bamboo. Musashi finally begins swinging so hard that the bamboo turns into thin sticks. This was his training. Miyamoto did this with the whole pile until Baki asked why. He doesn't really know. Baki says this is a waste of time, when it's better just to fight each other. But Miyamoto lets him know he had already been killed. Baki was confused, but then realized he was right. In Miyamoto Musashi's world, you could only fight once, and once you went down, you were dead. Miyamoto suggested that Baki train with him instead, but Baki suddenly kicked the bamboo in half. While this was impressive, Miyamoto still didn't see Baki as a warrior, so he instead asked Tokigawa if he could go for a stroll in the city. This caused Baki to get pissed, saying, "Looky here," throwing a massive haymaker that travels faster than light. This manages to catch Miyamoto, causing him to get so dizzy that he ends up on his knee. He got caught. Baki then repeats his own word. "Now you would have died 10 times over." Musashi finally admits it, that he would die. But the only problem was, this brother Musashi chose to take the hit. That means Baki's attack only landed because Musashi let it. Musashi almost got knocked out from this, so he decides to get serious, raising his arms like Yujiro. Tokigawa is now gushy, bro, cause Baki here begins acting first. The problem was, Musashi could actually sense his intentions. When Baki struck, he was caught. Musashi now had him. Baki was then cut down, right in the middle, and begins dramatically screaming. This dude Musashi then was like, "Alright, he's down. But then Baki unleashes another punch that sent Masashi flying onto the roof. As Baki was
Oh. Or whatever. Fun fact about the voice actor for Baki, he voice acts the boss for Saints Row 3 and 4, I believe.
standing there, panting, out of breath, Masashi decided to just leave and experience the new world. Now that he was in the city, he was shocked by the billboard, like completely shocked. He had no idea how it worked, but no one seemed to give a hell, so he realized, just maybe, like this was normal. He continued exploring the city with his eyes, but something about this world unsettled him. Masashi began having demonic thoughts about murdering people. So the police somehow read his mind and approached him. It was about his dogs hanging out. It was somehow illegal in Japan not to wear shoes. So they began questioning him about his identity, only to be told he was a 400-year-old samurai. The officer tried taking him in due to suspicions of drugs, so Miyamoto knocks them both out. Yeah, this is only the beginning, guys. We're about to witness someone who could make the death row inmates look like toddlers. More officers arrive, thinking that they could actually stop him, but as they grab his arm and attempt to choke him, they get shoved off with ease. He doesn't give a hell about the law, cause he's pretty much just a homeless man. Eventually, his antics gets him on TV, not for good reasons. He was seen crippling officers and grabbing their balls, and using invisible strikes to take them all out. This news was big enough to reach Doppo, his son, and even Jack Kama, who became Goliath. Shibukawa could also tell this man on TV might actually be Miyamoto. The homeless man, who also had a similar name to Miyamoto, begins thinking that, I need to save everyone from the demon Miyamoto. I'm the hero now. He pretty much had a hero complex, and we might actually be seeing a new main character in Baki. Now that all of Baki knows that there's a serial menace running around town, things are beginning to change a lot. Like for example, Masashi is now being followed by a bunch of thugs who are attempting to get some clout out of him. He stops though and turns around to look at them like he's some freak from a horror movie. Masashi then jumps over a high fence with ease. They realize the place that he's visiting isn't Epstein's, but Tokigawa's. The bodyguard of Tokigawa begins panicking over the intruder, but Masashi isn't exactly an intruder, but more of a guest. Once this is sorted out, Doppo comes in to speak to Tokigawa about Masashi. After a bit of talking, Masashi suddenly returns home like a stray dog. He's hungry. His presence though makes Doppo lock the hell in. Masashi doesn't think of him as anything more than a side character though, and as Doppo goes for a random rant, Masashi suddenly says, "Help! I'm being choked!" What is bro on about? He explains that he tried to cut Doppo 3 times, but each time Doppo just grabbed his neck like he's a chick with daddy issues. They decide to go to the dojo to really dish it out. To start though, Doppo prepares some things. First is concrete, which he completely destroys, then bottles, which he slaps the top off, before flinging a disc at Masashi. All of this was definitely impressive, but Masashi thinks that this brother is just doing magic tricks instead of martial arts. This insults Doppo, so he approaches Masashi and dares him to test him. Doppo suddenly tries to headbutt him, only to get his head put down like a disobedient child. Masashi then proceeded to say he was kidding. Those magic tricks were truly impressive. Despite the compliment from the greatest in history, Doppo is still heated though, because Masashi had rubbed his bald head. Only his wife can do that. This causes Masashi to randomly T-pose. No one tells Masashi what to do. Doppo can see the swords. He realizes, despite those being imaginary, he could probably get killed by that. The two finally go head to head, but what happens is, Doppo is cut effortlessly. Masashi then says, "See? Just like your things, it's just magic tricks." Then proceeds to punch Doppo in the face. Doppo flies back, catching himself, but now his nose is bleeding like crazy. Masashi thinks that this is over, but Doppo lets him know that he's still alive. This makes Masashi realize he needs an actual weapon to teach him a lesson, so he gets Tokigawa to bring him a sword. Now that he has a real blade, maybe Doppo here will understand that Masashi was having mercy on him. Doppo still thinks that he has a chance, so he gets into his stance, but as Doppo spoke of his title as the martial arts god, Miyamoto Masashi starts roasting him into oblivion before Doppo finally snaps like a quiet kid in class. But as he does a karate kick, Masashi makes him make out with his sword. After a few hours of this, Doppo was left all red and blushing like an anime girl. He was lucky enough that Miyamoto did not choose that chance to cut him in half. Poor Doppo. He's gonna forever be haunted by the memories of this. Wait, he did actually manage to land a hit on Masashi's face. Okay, Doppo, you're looking kinda dead right now, but you did pretty decent. Dopo afterwards was explained how Masashi returned to life, but Dopo was still worried about something else, his aura level. What happened during that match was something that could not be called respect, but more like mercy. So he decided to disappear for a while to go on his winter arc. Now last time, Dopo had landed a good hit on Miyamoto Musashi, so he needed to create a concoction to patch his wound. Tokugawa showed up to take him to this arena once again. Instead of a 90-year-old samurai practitioner though, he is now in front of the greatest waifu in all of anime. Retsu here wants to fight Musashi, not just fight, but be the one to kill Musashi. Miyamoto realizes this, and unleashes his demon aura, and begins approaching. Retsu is not taking any chances though, so he kicks him, but it gets caught fast by Miyamoto Musashi. As Retsu tries to do another kick, Musashi tries to do the same thing he did to Baki last time, but Retsu's stub breaks, causing Miyamoto Musashi to be knocked the hell out. As Retsu, the greatest waifu, leaves, he lets Musashi know to prepare his 400-year-old cheeks. Oh yeah, I got my life savings on Retsu, guys. That was so much aura. Yo, okay. Bro, that is the goal right there. I always pick the best characters to root for. Put your money on Retsu, guys. The homeless guy and Tokugawa sit down to have a conversation about the fight between Retsu and Musashi. This homeless man doesn't want anyone to fight Musashi though, cause he thinks that they are going to get absolutely obliterated. He's the main character now, and he's the only one able to defeat Musashi, cause he trains a style that was fitted to deal with swordsmen like Musashi. Guys, has this guy Motobe ever done anything notable? I don't think so, right? I guess we're gonna have to see who defeats Musashi first, Motobe or the greatest waifu in all of anime. I got my money on Retsu, okay? Retsu is now training his 3,000-year-old martial arts. His 120-year-old master comes in to tell him to chill out, bruh. But he's not about to chill out when the most powerful warrior in all of history is now on his turf. Retsu beats a random side character to death, while his master begins preaching absolute facts. The martial art he explains is meant for someone who never wants to get cut. By being fluid, one can avoid swords using ultra instincts. The master later demonstrates this by using some Chinese swordsmanship. It won't be very useful though, cause Musashi is a lot better at the sword than anyone here. His master calls him out and tells him to use a style that can avoid the sword, but after we get a cut of Musashi tearing up leaves, we then see Retsu all sweaty with injuries on his body. So the technique failed. The master suddenly decides to end Retsu's life for this, but as he's about to die, he turns into a Beyblade. This allowed him to completely nullify the sword's cut. Ah yes, the art of breaking laws of physics. That is the martial art his master is teaching him. Retsu had done well enough to actually earn something Baki never did. A hug from his father. The homeless man suddenly barges in though, just to laugh at Retsu for thinking that it'll work. Because Musashi here can cut things that bend and weave, like leaves, there's no way this technique right here is going to work. It's actually going to get him killed. The master, seeing the homeless man challenging his teachings, begins to get serious, but the homeless man here just wants to protect his harem. So, to keep everyone in line, he tells Retsu to just hightail up and run. Cause no matter what Retsu does, even with a nuclear bomb, he cannot kill Musashi. Retsu then asks, then what do I need to do? Which the homeless man says, you'll have to kill me before I let my kid fight a cross-eyed demon. The two get into an argument like a married couple before Retsu engages domestic abuse. The homeless man though uses his neck to grab his arm and attempts to cripple his arm. Luckily Retsu flies up, but that was way too close. The homeless man really tried to break his arm. He was completely serious about keeping his waifu safe. Seeing this, Retsu charges. The two engage in a fierce battle, only for the homeless man to be swept onto his back. He still gets up and acts like he's the main character. But as he's saying Retsu isn't getting through him, he suddenly has a heart attack and dies. Oh, it was actually the old man who assassinated him. The master sends Retsu off to prepare for his match tomorrow, which Retsu obliges. He'll need it, cause the battle today was about to be the most brutal and the highest level ever. Retsu began to approach the ring. In his mind, Musashi wasn't much stronger than him. While Musashi, who is in his room, is preparing like a gangster. He is completely prepared to face whatever comes next. And the crowd loves him, and he's already gaining immense popularity. He is Miyamoto Musashi after all. Retsu finally appears, and before we know it, they are standing over a pile of swords. The ref here explains the rules, which was just no firearms. That's it? You're not gonna say no nut kicking, no explosives? Well, the fight eventually begins. Retsu reveals his deadly arsenal without fear. He takes out the knives from his jacket and begins throwing them at Mach speed at Miyamoto. All of these completely miss, and even after he pretty much empties his pockets, Miyamoto stays unfazed, even cutting one in half just to prove that he's not to be messed with. Yeah, I'm not sure what Retsu was trying to prove by unleashing his ultimate at the start. Like, he could have saved this. It also didn't hurt anyone but a random dude in the audience. He finally stops flashing Miyamoto and takes off his heavy shirt, which he begins spinning his shirt over and over. Then, with a swing, he launches sand at Masashi, who looks still unfazed. Retsu continues spamming this move, which gets nails and teeth into Masashi's eyes. Even so, he still doesn't care! Brother doesn't even blink. Everyone is completely shocked that Masashi here did not give a single F about what Retsu was doing over there. To Masashi, it just looks like a kid playing with sand. I do feel like Retsu is resorting to long-range attacks so he doesn't have to get one-shotted by the final boss Masashi. Retsu proves this theory by throwing his jacket, but as Masashi cuts it, he gets hit with a full steel whip. Masashi gets taken down, and now Retsu is really feeling himself. Alright Retsu, I see you. He's actually cooking. But now Masashi is up, and he looks totally serious. Retsu instantly tried to take his head off, but Masashi took a step back. This does look super scary because Retsu has become a Beyblade, but Masashi knows how to deal with this. He drops his weapon, and as Retsu swings at him, he dodges like Goku. Retsu then goes for the head, but Masashi grabs each of them with ease. Retsu's slings are now torn off, and now Masashi has them in each of his hands. He realizes this thing Retsu is using is actually some jump ropes he stole from a playground. Being called out, Retsu was sweating and frozen. Then, finally he went for a sweep, before spinning like crazy, and then decided to take a perfect dunk. Masashi, who still had the ropes, just ignored him, so he could experience what it was like to whip folks back into slavery. Sadly, the whips completely broke. Even worse, they were the ones that Retsu had used since childhood. Here, Masashi felt so bad, he passed Retsu a sword. But instead of being grateful, Retsu proceeded to beat the brakes off Masashi and unleash his rage. Then, Miyamoto was on his face, completely laid out. Retsu then had his coldest moment ever here, saying that he's not about to let any warrior approach him unarmed. So, pick up your damn sword, Masashi, and fight me like a warrior. Masashi then got up and announced our waifu's funeral date, and oh my lord, our guy Masashi, hearing the crowd laughing at his words, gives flashback to the good old days. Masashi tosses his sword aside, because instead of bending to Retsu's will, he goes unarmed. Retsu tries the same punch as Masashi teleported, but he gets grabbed. Before Masashi can do anything, Retsu hits him with the "watch me whip" before knocking his skull to the sky and attempting to finish things. But Masashi then grabbed his stub and then held him up with one arm. What the hell? I have never seen anything like this in Baki. Using the most disrespectful move ever, Masashi turned Retsu into a blade and swings him into the freaking ground. But wait, what? Retsu still somehow got up, with his eyes rolled back. He brought his hands up, but Masashi grabbed him and flipped him onto the ground. Turns out, he was unconscious. But now, he's ready to strike, missing an attack though. He jumps back, and then charges in, only to get blocked by Masashi. He then tries a kick, but that too gets stopped. Another punch came to Masashi, but Retsu's elbow was broken and then thrown. Retsu was now done for. And I'm about to lose my life savings, cause Masashi has now picked up a blade. He inspects each one, breaking them with only a swing. Now, he's finally found a good one. Time to chop up this young Chinese boy up and eat him. Retsu suddenly gets into Baki's stance. He's trying to conjure the power of plot armor. Alright, let's go. Masashi begins approaching. As he comes into range, Retsu sees this man turn into an actual demon. But the swing that comes from Masashi isn't light. It's soft as hell. Retsu yells at him. Why the hell are you not cutting me in half? This is a rated M anime, you bastard. Come on. So with that, Masashi slices, only to get hit with the Jackie Chan special. Masashi goes down and everyone is cheering. We're so back! Now, I didn't expect to see this, but Masashi begins dying on the ground like he suddenly contracted Ebola. Seizing the chance, Retsu jumps high and prepares to... Oh shit! No! Retsu begins getting tied up like this is a BDSM session.
That's
also,
hot.
since Retsu is unable to move at all, people begin calling him not the greatest waifu in all of anime. Feeling the immense shame, especially in this freaky position, Retsu begs Masashi to strike him down, because at least that way, he'd keep his honor. But Masashi doesn't want to. This makes Retsu cry, like a baby. No! Retsu, come on bro, you got this! Masashi picks up his sword, approaches him, then suddenly cuts the sword next to him. Now it's time for Retsu to die. Masashi had the courtesy to free him though, before putting everything into one slash. That Retsu counters with a spin, but his nub gets cut off by the following attack. Retsu manages to back up, but now he's on one leg. And then, blood pours out of him like crazy. Wait, he's not dead. He's not! because Retsu had actually managed to use Baki logic to avoid being cut down. I bet it's working, but it looks pretty bad. Retsu prepares to charge in for one last clash. He's given his entire life to martial arts. There's no going back. He's a warrior. Retsu charges forward fast, but his fist gets cut by Masashi, who begins panicking because this goat, Retsu, isn't stopping. With a smile, Retsu prepares for another attack. But this man Masashi disappears, flips him into mid-air, and chops him into bite-sized slices. Retsu was now standing there, bleeding from the stomach, completely finished. A memory hit him though, something where he and his sensei spoke about. If I die, do I really die? What if friendship? What if plot armor? Unless someone takes my head, I shall fight to the very end. This backstory though did not help Retsu. He still went down. Bro, no! Retsu! Get up! What about that backstory? What about becoming the best wife in all of anime? Finally, the match ended, but no one was cheering. This wasn't about. This was a warrior's end. The medical team came to revive him, but it was way too late. All of the main characters had eventually gathered to mourn their fallen waifu. Well, this was more than that. This was pretty much the GOAT of Baki. He had trained all his life, thousands of years, gallons of blood, and pools of sweat. It could be seen, the history on his body, the hard work, everything. Tokugawa felt terrible, but the master let him know. If this was true, if it really was a mistake, Retsu would have gotten up and beaten his ass. Sadly guys, it does seem like the reign of the best waifu has come to an end by the greatest swordsman in all of history.
Damn.
The number one under the sun, Masashi. Look guys, I'm not crying! You're crying! Tokugawa was now depressed. Knowing that Retsu died, he decides to ask what Masashi thinks of Retsu's fighting spirit. Masashi though just says, it reminded him when he was just 11 years old, on the battlefield, and all the grown men were in fear of what he was doing to them. Like no one wouldn't smoke with him. Arrows had suddenly landed on him.
That's him at
So he used
11?
someone's
What?
body to block them. A random samurai appeared though, and stabbed him, so he murdered him too. When the main army came, he prepared to face them all by himself. That was what Masashi thought of Retsu. He was insanely impressed by what Retsu had done. He was a true warrior. Tokugawa felt a lot better knowing this, while Masashi fell in love. It was the love we all felt for our waifu, Retsu. Tokugawa then asked him about the greatest opponent, Kozue. Not Baki's thought girlfriend, but Sasasuke Kozue. Masashi begins thinking. He thought so hard he fell asleep. Then he said, huh? Who the hell is Kozue? That thought Kozue? Tokugawa had no idea what he was referring to, so he told Masashi he meant Sasasuke Kozue. Oh, that side character. Well, Masashi had just beaten him to death with a wooden paddle. Masashi let Tokugawa know that the Baki characters of today are way more powerful than the dead swordsman back in his day. He'll make sure he kills more characters, because it's a ton of fun. Homeless Man and Baki are now speaking together. The homeless man still thinks that he's the hero of the entire anime, so he wants to stop his harem from being slaughtered by Masashi. To do this, he has come to harness Baki's plot armor. Baki doesn't like what he's saying though, so he begins to levitate in the air and says, "Come get in then, kid." The homeless man stands up. He wants all the smoke, even in front of plot armor. Baki begins cracking his fingers like Kaneki from Tokyo. As he lunges to beat the old man's face in, a smoke bomb explodes in his face, blinding him, and the old man was able to appear behind him and finish the
Fucking
match
love Tokyo
with ease.
Ghoul.
The homeless man had just shown Baki that he was no longer the main character. He himself had taken that title from Baki. He was now the hero of all animes. Masashi has finally been arrested, but not for what you guys think. It wasn't because he's having his delicious feet out for the entire anime for free. It was because these officers had eyewitnesses who saw the death of the greatest waifu and decided to grow some balls to snitch. The man here works for Tokugawa and says he'll make sure Miyamoto is safe. But who's keeping who safe, office worker? Not even chains can hold Miyamoto, so he'll be turning himself in. Outside, hundreds of officers in riot gear are waiting for him. This reminded them of something. Back in the past, they had tried to arrest a Baki character, but it took drastic measures, like surrounding him and beating the brakes off him while he was netted. The guy here tells the officers to back off, but Masashi tells them, "Nah, come on, it'd be a shame for all of you to show up and not meet your maker." Then he decides to moan, making all of these officers in the area panic in fear. Then he was taken in a vehicle off to death row. We get a cut to off-brand Katsumi from Timu, who was waiting for Masashi to show up. When he finally did, brother thinks that he can actually face off against Miyamoto. But are we sure this dude has a chance? cause this main Miyamoto was standing here and is looking like a demon. Eventually, they have Miyamoto and the guy face off. The person they have Miyamoto facing off with is a Kendo master. I already know that this is not about to end well for this guy, so everyone pray for him. The guy had Masashi engage with him in something he wouldn't be good at, since it's Kendo, not a duel to the death. Despite this, Masashi approaches him calmly, then raises his bamboo sword, and just snaps this man's sword in half, and whip this man into the afterlife. Honestly, this brother got it easy. Now that this dude is dead, Masashi was disappointed in the low quality material. With disappointment, he was already getting ready to leave, cause there are no main characters to fold here. Suddenly, Shibikawa enters the room, very carefully, not realizing that Miyamoto is already eyeing him up. Yep, this is definitely a main character. Miyamoto could tell. Shibikawa decides to face off with Miyamoto. And if you guys don't know, Shibikawa knows Aikido, the thing I practice and use to deflect copyright. Shibikawa acts humble and approaches Masashi to shake his hand, but when Masashi shook it, he was like, "Huh? Dude, let go of my hand." Shibikawa suddenly begins folding Masashi and eventually lays him flat on the ground. He was doing this for Retsu, and with a very deserving punch, Masashi was hit. Afterwards, Masashi finally gets up, but instead of a fight ensuing, Shibikawa begins scolding him. He was enraged at Masashi for doing that to Retsu, and that disrespect was totally deserved. Masashi didn't mind very much. He was more impressed by the technique Shibikawa used on him. So Shibikawa spent 140 days explaining this. Aikido. Surprisingly, I'm not the one who's the best in the world. Shibikawa is. But you know, I still think this brother is going to get folded, even with Aikido, no matter whatever peaceful landscape he imagines in his head. Shibikawa had to walk through lava and flames to get here. He even had to change his diaper before facing Miyamoto. But luckily, he had emptied his bowels beforehand, cause Miyamoto suddenly cuts his neck off, and the moment Masashi unleashes aura by holding invisible swords, Shibikawa knew he was screwed. Then before he could move, Masashi slashes his entire body in half. Now, this is all imaginary, so it looks kinda goofy, but Shibikawa begins dying from the pretend sword slash. I'm not really sure if Masashi just has that much aura, or Baki characters are just schizophrenic. Shibikawa gets back up and acknowledges Masashi's prowess. He hadn't even seen Masashi move. He was utterly destroyed. Finally, he approached Masashi. This time, as they shook each other's hands again, Shibikawa started doing his best, not to poop himself, cause Masashi had just violated him hundreds of times in pretend. Later, the main character Baki decides to meet up with Yujiro, who isn't here to ask him to clean his toilet. Instead, Yujiro begins enjoying his orange juice and taking his daily Viagra pills. Yujiro brought this homeless man here cause he wants to get advice from him, a random homeless man, but gets told, "Yujiro, you ain't about to do nothing against Masashi." This makes Yujiro angry, so he gets up and asks, "Who the hell can take on Masashi then?" Homeless man responds, "Sorry buddy, but I'm the only one who can. My kin, I'll protect you." This makes Masashi utterly shocked, and as he dove to just murder this homeless man, he gets met with smoke. Now our homeless man, the main character, is trembling in his boots in the hallway. Not because he was scared, but because he was scared that he was going to accidentally hurt his waifu, Yujiro. Now, later at the place Masashi usually hangs out at, Yujiro catches a man playing with a hornet, so he kills the man's pet and demands to know where Masashi is. Masashi, who was chilling with Tokigawa, senses a disturbance in the menace first. It was Yujiro, who had come here to really prove the homeless man wrong, that he was the only waifu who could kill Masashi. The two settle down to have a good time, but as they're drinking, Masashi noted that Yujiro looked like a potential sugar daddy for him. Now, Yujiro isn't much better off than Masashi, so I don't know why he says that. He does have 20 bucks though. They drink for a while, before Yujiro calls Masashi out for being a dirty fighter. But Masashi didn't care, as long as he could cut people in half, he would be happy. His reputation in the past grew this way. People loved him for being a menace. And turns out, Masashi loved all of that attention. He misses his glory days, and fame. So after this outburst, he looks at Yujiro like a gold digger does a billionaire. Before anyone could react, he cuts Yujiro. Although, Yujiro did not give a hell. The slash from Masashi had barely even scratched him. Masashi realized this, in which Yujiro decides to display his dominance by flinging a bottle cap at his head. Then he orders Tokigawa to give Masashi his sword. Now Masashi is armed to the teeth. It was now time for him to lock in. As he stuck his sword out, Yujiro grabs it like, Let's dance, baby. Before slapping Masashi in the face, Masashi went flying, but Yujiro held on and watched his brother doze off like a Los Angeles heroin addict. Before flipping him, Masashi was completely dazed. He became even more cross-eyed from all this. Even so, all of this really didn't faze him. So he attempted to move his blade and fling Yujiro. But this guy Yujiro was mad heavy. So he dropped his weight, and as he did, Yujiro was finally lifted before being thrown a couple of feet. Yujiro was surprised by this, so he decided to reciprocate Masashi's strength by unlocking his demon back. Masashi then became possessed and charged, but his attacks were blocked. But the following one landed on the sexy thigh of Yujiro. Another attack came, but Yujiro hopped over it. Now it was serious. These two right here were in a face-off to prove to each other who really was the most powerful demon in Baki. As Masashi charged in once more, his wrist gets grabbed by Yujiro, who suddenly kicks him in the balls. This had Masashi looking like a castrated pigeon. I don't blame him. A kick in the balls from Yujiro would send anyone to James Charles. Masashi finally stopped rolling on the ground and pushed through the pain. With this, he finally asked who the hell he was up against. His match against Yujiro reminded him of something in the past, when he was just a level 100 player farming level 1 newbies. None of them had a chance to avoid being violated by him. After that, he headed off to his room. There was something he was training, something he was studying with his heart and soul. It was being schizophrenic, writing, and unlocking a new landscape of control. When he finally reached a good level, he no longer needed anything, only his imagination. Finally, Yujiro says his name, Yujiro Hama. Although he had landed a nut kick, he had taken a scratch to the neck. Yujiro decides to glaze Masashi a bit, but once Masashi was told that people had been talking about him, he started becoming a clout chaser. He now wanted to take Yujiro's title as the strongest creature in the world, so he could take all the hot babes, all the money, and all the fame. Masashi said screw the sword, and although his balls hurt, he was ready to become rich and get that money. He slashed Yujiro's other sexy thigh and gave him a crappy haircut. Yujiro now realizes that he might actually be done for, but before he dies from Masashi's neck slash. What happens next is out of a Korean romance drama. The main character, Homeless Man, jumps in to save Yujiro from certain death. Yujiro gets flustered from this and began beating on Motobe like, OMG! Motobe! Why did you save me? You shouldn't have done that! Eventually, Musashi steps in to save the Homeless Man from dying from Yujiro's affection. Homeless Man was later brought to Tokigawa. He was quite proud of himself doing a get down Mr. President for Yujiro. But Yujiro still had the balls to meet up with Musashi behind his back to go on a date. Homeless Man was now begging to get an official fight with the greatest swordsman. But Tokigawa doesn't really want to hear all that until Homeless Man asserted his dominance.
The fuck just happened?
We're now drinking together. They were talking about the homeless man, Motobe. Masashi was able to analyze him in a few seconds. When he was stopping the fight, he realized that Motobe was a strong foe, in which Yujiro says, well, that man did train for a very long time. It was a waste of time, or so he thought, until the perfect prey had come for the homeless man to use it all on. Homeless man later beats up with Gaia, who was his student. He was showing off his arsenal to him, the ones he was going to use on Masashi. He then turned to Gaia and said he felt like beating on him, and judging from Gaia's face, this often happens. Gaia tries to stop the homeless man from assaulting him by spitting on that thing, but sadly it doesn't work or even impress the homeless man. So he instead approaches him and tries to stab him. The homeless man knows all the tricks and just places a napkin on his hand before throwing him and taking his arm hostage. Gaia was now tied up and all on the ground. Homeless man begins acting mad weird because he drops his pants suddenly. Alright, please, Gaia, stop rolling on the ground and smiling at homeless man like that. Yo, this is getting mad weird. As for Jack the Nibbler, he was R farming on the midget Tokigawa. He finished all of his surgery, now standing at a whopping 8 feet tall. So, what does he do with his height? He feeds the fishes with his homeboy, Tokigawa of course. They were also talking about the main character and stud, Homeless Man. Tokigawa suggests he fights Homeless Man, in which Jack the Nibbler begins sweating and trembling, although he was no stranger to fighting homeless people with weapons.
Why does it keep doing that?
About to send him back to the operating room. Jack tries to do an axe kick, but what it lands on isn't Homeless Man's face, but instead a knife. His leg almost came off. Quickly, Jack does what he does best, which is nibbling. But he doesn't realize that multiple here.
Guess we're not gonna finish this. Oh yeah, I remember this. Let's watch this.
What's the fastest way to ruin your YouTube reputation?
I don't
Is it
know.
mixing fact with fiction when covering serious investigations?
It is half fiction that is parallel to the real story, and then there's just the real story.
Or is it lying about catching predators so that viewers support you on Patreon?
You can watch my back real good by supporting me on Patreon. Link in description.
Or maybe, is it threatening and harassing other creators who didn't spread your message?
But I am being the nicest I could be. I could literally cancel you, Charlie, and I choose not to. I'm the friggin' people hunter.
Perhaps the better question is, how do you get away with it not once, but multiple times? Hi, I'm the Internet Anarchist. I create weekly YouTube documentaries, and today, we'll be diving into the disturbing decisions that led one of YouTube's most respected predator hunters, Mama Max, to losing over 50,000 subscribers in January of
That's
2024 alone, possibly ending his well-respected career on YouTube.
Well, also I don't know how
I
many
consider them
subs
a
he
lie.
had to begin
He's a
with.
complete fraud, dishonest, exploitative. He was deceiving everyone all along.
Max's main channel, Mama Max, was created on the 26th of May 2016, with his first upload coming just 2 days later. However, judging from the comments, Max already had a dedicated fan base that loved him long before his channel existed.
Loved
with
him
comments
long
reading,
time.
"We have missed you, Mama. Glad you're back. The king is back." The love and admiration towards Max only grew, as Max discussed themes of emotional distress in his Life Sucks series, which was meant to comfort viewers going through similar negative emotions. While there were light-hearted uploads like his Saving Game documentary series and his anime reviews, a majority of the subject matter on Max's channel was dark and edgy in nature, something that would only get worse with time. By the 27th of March 2020, Max uploaded the video cartoonincorporated.mp4, which would go on to set the tone for his channel moving forwards.
Today, you and I are gonna hunt some.
The upload featured Max documenting his journey through the dark recesses of YouTube in search of users with malicious intent towards children. At the time, YouTube was dealing with an overwhelming infestation of predators, and through videos like this, Max made it his mission to bring them to justice. Max's surreal editing style and provocative elements propelled the video to over 2 million views, bringing in overwhelming support for his attempts to clean up YouTube, and Cartoon Incorporated was the first in a long line of so-called predator hunting videos that were uploaded to his channel, with videos like kidschat.net and mylol.apk receiving millions of views and hundreds of Patreon pledges. Max had found not just financial success, but an identity. At this point, Max had fully leaned into this edgy investigator persona that thrived from exposing predators. Unfortunately, this kind of content could get any creator in trouble with YouTube's strict moderation, and Max was no exception. On the 13th of September 2020, Max received a strike on his video titled "Hunting Predators on a Children's Dating App" for harassment. He responded to the situation by confronting YouTube about the decision to take down the video.
Where the fuck were you? Sipping on your venti frappuccino at YouTube HQ when I was in the trenches with them. I worked 3 long, hard, traumatizing months on this project, trying to fix the injustice that has been wrought on the internet, just for you to obliterate it completely. You treat criminals better than you treat your own creators. This is not the first time you protected pedophiles.
Max would end his rant by asking his viewers to reach out to either YouTube or any other popular creators to get answers on why the platform was supposedly protecting pedos.
All I ask is for you to tweet to Team YouTube, Susan Wojcicki, H3H3, Philip DeFranco, Moist Critical, Scarce, Keemstar, Markiplier, or whoever your preferred voice to get through to YouTube is, with the message:
The hashtag AnswerUsPeerTube almost immediately gained traction on Twitter, morphing into numerous viewers and creators making the black and white argument that either YouTube supported his cause or they were protecting predators. However, the situation was far more nuanced than that.
So when it comes to YouTube and when it comes to the idea of, hey, is this site picking a side between protecting individuals that are predatory? And I feel that if you have predatory issues on your platform, you should use your platform to call out actual predators on the internet. Again, this content, some of the people that are making it sometimes will go above and beyond with their storytelling or their coverage, where they may unintentionally violate something TOS related. They may reveal personal information. They may show some. And in that case, YouTube has to act in favor of a predator. At least that's what it appears to be. It's not that YouTube, I think, is assisting any predators. It's literally because the content that is uploaded may not have been checked or screened hard enough, and YouTube has had to enact its TOS on that content.
The 27th of December 2021, Max had acquired a second strike, and with it came another campaign against YouTube. While the goal of eradicating predators on the platform was a noble one, the methods that Max employed were becoming increasingly more problematic. The video titled "PickASide.win" served as a catalyst for getting YouTube's attention, and while it seemed well-meaning at first, the conversation quickly shifted to Max accusing YouTube of some very horrible things. The first portion of the video was a compilation of various creators sharing complaints about moderation on the platform. In contrast, the second half of the video saw Max borderline demanding that popular creators like Charlie, Philip DeFranco, Ethan, and Cop's husband spread the hashtag. He even threatened Cop's husband to speak on the matter based on past personal issues.
Corpse, I know you have nothing to do with this, but with all of your power, influence, and the favor you owe me, I just couldn't help myself.
What the fuck is wrong with this dude?
Remember when you reached out after years of not speaking to me while I was at the hospital tending to my sick girlfriend, and you kept trying to rush me home to do you a huge favor, and then you threw me under the bus for something you did. So, how about you do me the fucking favor this time and talk about something besides yourself for once? It will give you a good look.
To top things off, Max directly accused YouTube of loving predators.
Tonight, YouTube will choose. Let die the pedophiles they love, or suffer the little children. And by the end of the night, I want Twitter to be a shitstorm.
Max was already crossing the line to get his point across, and it was only a matter of time before someone called
Why
him
did
out
he
for it.
talk in
On the
that
28th
voice
of
or whatever
December
the fuck? It's
2021, Tommy C went
annoying
live to
as
YouTube
shit.
to give his reaction to Max's Pick a Side video, and within minutes he had already identified the major pitfalls that were going unnoticed.
I have looked at it. I have also looked at the way it was presented, this sort of us or them mentality. And the only time you use an us or them type tactic is, in my experience, is so it's easier to cover up the flaws.
Tommy went on to point out the fact that Max framed things as either you agree and support our cause or you're a predator, as well as stating that the campaign was more about Max and less about the children he claimed to protect. Before Tommy could fully go through the video, Max entered the stream chat and demanded that they entered a call.
I just was informed Mama Max is interested in talking and he's in waiting to call right now.
Well, he's gonna have to wait because I'm going through this nightmare. And I said I've only skimmed coming in. I want to get a live reaction to this. This is the way it's being presented right here.
Hey, Tommy, can you pause it real quick?
Sure.
Mama Max is in the chat trying to bait you to bring him on. He's saying, wish we could have talked like adults, man.
Could talk like adults. You didn't make a fucking video like a fucking adult. Don't give me this. You should have contacted me ahead of time. By the way, did we go through something like this last year? Your time's up. And you know what? You're going to wait until my show's done instead of you coming in here and throwing one red herring after another to trying to get away from the fact that this is slop.
By the time he was done reacting to the video, Tommy was firmly in the opinion that Max was trying to use other creators to promote his guideline disputes with YouTube and use the veil of children vs predators to cover his intent. With that being said, one section of Max's video stood out to Tommy above all. Specifically, when Max used a clip of Tommy but never actually reached out to him to cover the story.
So, again, I'm gonna have to upset all of my
I get in here. Unbelievable. You know what? You know what that tells me? He didn't send me the fucking DM because he knew I would fucking see right through it. He knew I would expose him, and he figured putting me at the end. This is a threat. This is a threat.
When Max was questioned on the Half-Baked podcast about the objective of the hashtag Pick a Side movement, he immediately dodged the question.
You used it to try to reach bigger YouTubers, but is any of this like, this is a way to make my channel go to the next level?
No, I think my channel get taken down for making a video like this. Everyone's saying be careful, like don't let your channel get terminated. I want to see some progress, specifically with YouTube and us.
Ultimately, Max had got everything he wanted. Pick a Side YouTube had taken over online discourse, his platform was flooded with new supporters, and YouTube provided him with a channel manager. However, that outcome led Max to believe two very destructive ideas. One, anyone that questioned him, his mission, or the methods he used was to be labeled a predator. And two, the quickest way to spread the message was to get other established creators to signal boost it. Nothing illustrates the first point better than how Max attacks the reputations of both Magnetar and Tommy. His video titled Believe All Abusers, which was meant to debunk allegations from his ex-girlfriends, devolved into an attack of the YouTuber who posted them, Magnetar. While the allegations and claims from both parties are concerning, I'd like you to focus on how Max used his platform and status as a quote predator hunter to confidently label Magnetar as one. Worse still, he did it with little to no evidence besides the testimony of one witness, doxing Magnetar in the process.
Anthony Field, Haley's boyfriend, Magnetar on YouTube, the one who published this video on me.
To back up these claims, Max shows a long list of DMs and the claims of one girl.
He graduated high school and he was an adult. He sent his to a high schooler who was around 14 years old or 15 years old. We were like hanging out and she was like, this guy sent me his... We're like kids, so we're just like, oh my gosh.
Max goes on to state that the evidence on Magnetar is insufficient to build a case, despite claiming he's had hundreds of victims.
But I have not made a video on him, despite wanting to all these years, because I do not want to harass them, and I feel this is not enough evidence to build an entire case against him. So I have not and will not until we have more proof. We know that he has multiple victims spanning the past 8 years, and if anyone wants to come forward, email me with the subject line, Anthony Field.
Accusing people of being predators wasn't always something Max did directly, as seen in his response to Tommy C. During his documentary titled This Is What Happened to a Child Predator on TikTok, Max took out some of the video's runtime to gloat about the success of Pick a Side YouTube and demean Tommy C for going against them.
From the very DNA I designed the Pick a Side campaign, we impelled the mobs to howl our message into the high heavens, some with a bit more salt than others.
While showing out-of-context clips of Tommy that made him look crazy, Max sprinkled in over 15 QR codes that contained messages meant to put down his opposition and imply they were a predator. These accusations wouldn't go unnoticed by Max's community, as both Tommy and Magnetar received ample harassment from them over the years. The power was already clouding Max's judgment, and if he deemed a message or case was worth sharing, then it was going to be shared by every creator he knew, whether they liked it or not. Sadly, that tactic only worked the first 2 times. By the time he went for the 3rd attempt, people began looking into his claims more seriously, and what they found upended Max's entire career. Lately, I've been always on the move, from checking the mountains of Thailand to spending hours grinding video editing. Trust me, your ears will thank you. Now let's get back into the video. On the 27th of October 2023, following a 4-month hiatus, Max renamed his channel to God Cult, unlisted all his previous uploads, and published a video titled Brainwash Your Favorite Influencer.
Welcome to your programming. Kindly send this video to your favorite influencer. We will test them on the content of their character. Do not listen to their words. Look at their actions. Let us begin.
After priming viewers with several philosophical questions, Max details a story of a girl whom a werewolf cult leader allegedly victimized.
On March 18th, 2016, Spencer, a 16-year-old girl from Wiley, Texas, mysteriously disappeared, lured by the illusion of joining a supernatural family as a vampire on some random corner of the internet. She actually found herself ensnared in a dangerous cult led by a child predator posing as a werewolf god.
Max spent the rest of the video trying to provoke his audience into reaching out to larger channels that could help spread Spencer's testimony. Although the claims made in the video were shocking, Max had provided almost no evidence to support them. It was as if Max expected the internet to pick up the story based on the statements of a single individual. By now, viewers had begun to connect the dots, and the comment section was flooded with aggressive criticism towards Max. In a bid to turn the public opinion in his favor, Max disabled the comment section and directed viewers to a live stream on Spencer's channel to further elaborate on the case.
It was basically a supernatural cult where he convinced all of us that we were vampires, werewolves, hybrids, celestials, and all this shit. Like, and then he would sit there and claim that he knew God, and then there was one point in the cult where God was dead and he was the new God.
The stream was 4 hours long and mostly featured Spencer's account of a time in the alleged werewolf cult. The extreme duration of the stream and the lack of substantial evidence put many of the viewers off from interacting with it, which was something Max couldn't tolerate. On the 11th of November 2023, Max published the video titled "This is what happened to Mama Max," where he vented his frustration at the lack of support from his viewers and fellow content creators, at times mocking both parties for not seeing the significance of what he was creating.
If PewDiePie can come back and talk about Sniper Wolf, then he and others can talk about the nightmarish realities that millions of children are enduring every day. Last week, I released a charity video in collaboration with the survivors of a destructive cult that has victimized hundreds of minors. Despite its significance, it turned out to be the worst performing video on my channel.
The black and white thinking from previous campaigns was on full display as Max berated the online community for not joining him on another crusade of internet chaos.
I had hoped that influencers, especially those who've interacted with my content before, would step up, even if it was part of a more lighthearted stream, like a Halloween special. Unfortunately, it seems that self-preservation outweighs child welfare for most influencers.
Max was fixating on metrics and negative feedback instead of trying to handle the case properly, or at the very least, explaining it coherently. To many, it seemed like this case wasn't about the victims of and instead was about Max getting the recognition and praise he thought he deserved. This line of thinking was further supported by Max's next upload, titled "This is the greatest cancellation of all time" at Pink10, now retitled "Reacting to the Reactions of SS Sniper Wolf's Actions." The video was another desperate grab at attention, but this time Max implied that the issues he discussed were far more important than what anyone else had to say, and therefore other creators were obligated to talk about it, especially Charlie. Max had reached out to Charlie concerning the case before and wasn't going to stop until he got a reply.
Charlie, you are a voice heard by millions. We reached out hoping for a private response at the very least. Your platform has the power to drive significant change, yet many voices remain unheard amid the digital clamor. You've built a platform that resonates with a vast audience, a platform that has the incredible potential not just to entertain, but to empower. Your voice can reach corners of the internet that many of us cannot, making you not just an influencer, but a potential catalyst for much needed awareness and action.
There were many things Max could have done to get the word out, but trying to guilt others into doing it for him was the worst way possible to handle it, something that he would immensely regret in the coming months. To offset the criticism and explain his actions, Max went on a now deleted stream titled "Fight Me" to discuss the points being made against him. However, that didn't work well for them, as Max and Spencer were mostly condescending towards the critics while putting their message on an untouchable pedestal, a stance that only alienated people they were trying to convince.
And just overall, it's one of the strangest, weirdest videos, and kind of guilt-tripping people into doing the same type of content he's making, when most of us, and actually...
Alright, I'm not trying to guilt trip y'all. I am telling y'all the truth, the objective truth. There are millions of children that are enslaved that need our help.
Charlie's brief response to the situation a few days later only added to the growing outrage towards Max.
Stop ignoring Mama Max. Yeah, so here, you want me to talk about it a little bit? That rubbed me the wrong way. We talked like a month ago, about like what he was working on in his investigation. And then apparently when I had COVID, he messaged me a couple times and I never saw it. And now he's taken that as me ghosting him and ignoring his very important mission. And it really rubs me the wrong way.
Unfortunately, that wasn't enough to make Max reconsider his actions, as he continued to go live to talk about the case while refusing to give any evidence or answer questions directly.
Just because Charlie is a big YouTuber, there shouldn't be an expectation that he should be able to cover like child fucking like or child trafficking or human trafficking. You know, that's ridiculous to try to push that onto him.
Dude,
and you're doing it very in
this
a
might be a
manipulative
different
way.
guy, but until you turn
Who
into
cares
a
about
femboy?
Spencer? You're the guy with the fucking platform. I'm sorry, all due respect, but I don't give a fuck about this person's opinion. You're the one of 760k subs. What the fuck?
Max was clearly not ready to have a productive dialogue on how to go about the case, and instead wanted to garner more publicity and donations by interviewing survivors on stream or threatening other creators to cover it. Max was prioritizing getting more eyes on the investigation, but he failed to realize that it would lead to more scrutiny around all his previous investigations. Users on Reddit began taking a closer look at Max's catalog and made several chilling observations. Reading, "I think Mama Max has faked some of his content. This may be already obvious to some folks, but it's wild to me that he insists these are real situations. There's so many story conveniences and coincidences in his videos," as well as Max's mega upload suspended and reported to law enforcement, with the account being taken down for possible child exploitation material. From uncovering inconsistencies in his previous uploads to finding objectionable content in his mega folders, users were poking noticeable holes in Max's facade as a predator hunter. However, it was Max who truly tore down his reputation. On the 5th of January 2024, Max started what would now be known as the worst and longest live stream of his career. For the first half of the 8-hour stream, Max interviews 2 new survivors, while deflecting critical questions from viewers about what he was doing.
Keg says... Keg keeps donating. Why are you supporting this if you disagree with it? He said, clearly more interested in virtue signaling and moral support than fixing peds. I'm outie. Camden is nothing. Small fry. Way bigger systems out there. That's very disrespectful. And he is part of the system just as you are, just as we all are.
When the viewers weren't able to get through to Max, his close friends and fellow creators called in to talk some sense into him, but sadly, that didn't work either.
There's a way to present it, there's a way to handle this before you get to that point, right? And that's what we need to be focusing on. That's like where everything needs to be centered on, is where I'm at. And that's all I really can say about the situation.
Okay, so I would have really appreciated this like 2 months ago when we first reached out. I reached out to you and multiple other creators asking for help, and none of you were responsive. I understand y'all are busy and doing your own things, but this is the first time I've ever handled a case of this complexity and magnitude, and that is why I was asking for help.
If you go to police and they say, okay, yay, we're going to go get him or whatever, I don't know, live in a dreamland, whatever you want to feel, are you going to court after that?
I'm unsure about the entire process. I think that's the job of the district attorney, but y'all would likely, the survivors would likely appear as witnesses.
Okay. What bothers me is your answer right there. You've been doing this for 5 years and you don't know how the process goes?
To cover his blunder, Max immediately made the stream private and threatened to flag channels that re-uploaded it, with a tweet from Lyrics reading, "Mama Max just threatened to flag my channel. Shortly after our debate last night, he DMs me at 2 AM, asking to censor/take down my stream because of a privacy complaint he has, and I complied, but then accuses me of bullying victims, not true for your information, heavily implying he's going to flag me. The recent streams weren't the only thing Max was trying to hide, as he either deleted or unlisted his previous uploads. Unfortunately for Max, there were 2 videos on the horizon that he couldn't strike down, both containing information that revealed just how badly the investigation was going. From the 17th to the 18th of January 2024, Nicholas Diorio and Mudaha from Some Ordinary Gamers would publish their respective hour-long reports on Max's investigation. Nick's video came first and mostly explored the unethical practices that had infested Max's investigation, one of which was Max's conflict of interest when it came to Spencer. Spencer was a close family friend who was now living with Max, receiving income from his streams, and was put in charge of handling funds that would be allocated to the other 7 known survivors. Next, Nick looked into the convoluted information given to the viewers during the God Cult campaign, concluding that Max had never fully explained what exactly the werewolf cult was, or even given it a name. Then there was the matter of the previous investigations having either inconsistent information, weak evidence, or none at all, which led Nick to speculate on whether or not any other predators were actually arrested.
I don't give a shit if my video comes back up. It did what it needed to do. The rapist that was in the video is currently in police custody.
Was that as a result of your video, or was that prior to the video?
Yes, it was because of the video. I don't know if the police asked him to come back, or he went on his own volition, or they forced him to come back. I don't know any of those details. I just know he went back to Canada and was in police custody for a certain amount of time.
Throughout the video, Nick included snippets from a Discord call between him, Muda, and Max, which showed Max's unwillingness to confront reality.
Yeah, why are you putting it all on me?
Because it's your case!
The one bringing it. Why are you
Absolutely, I am the first one.
Yeah.
You are the only one. You haven't convinced anyone to come on board yet.
You haven't convinced exactly.
That's
You haven't
because
made any.
you haven't been listening to this.
That's because you haven't been giving anybody anything to work with.
This for months.
Yeah, and I've had a 2-hour-long call, and I'm not moving anywhere close to the situation.
Muta, why can't you take initiative to talk to other survivors?
Well, I'm talking to you right now more than anybody else.
Shortly after, Muda published his take on the subject and covered similar points to the ones Nick made. However, Muda made sure to shed light on the incompetent tactics that Max built his case on. According to Muda, the investigation into the werewolf cult had not yet yielded enough evidence to support Max's outrageous claims. Remember, Max was accusing someone of serious crimes against hundreds of children, but only gave spoken word testimony to back those accusations.
In the same video where he is discussing very serious allegations and very, very serious stories regarding victims, you can imagine why a lot of people are looking at this as him treating this as a joke. It's not a joke. This is serious. And in reality, what are people like Mr. Beast? What are people like PewDiePie gonna do? What are you gonna bring his kid into this? What, he's a father now, so he's not going to signal boost unsubstantiated claims?
As his credibility faded away, Max was frantically trying to shift the narrative with his "I place accountability in my own hands" video. You'd expect the title and thumbnail to be followed by a straightforward apology from Max, but that wasn't what viewers got. Instead, they were treated to 15 minutes of Max avoiding the mess that he had created.
I've got people telling me just talk about the case and nothing else. I've got people telling me just address the criticisms. I've got people telling me just apologize. I feel like I'm being pulled in every which way, and no matter how hard I try, I cannot make everyone happy. People say just wait for law enforcement to do something, but we've waited 7 years and they haven't done anything. So we decided to just go public with it and put eyes on him, and people wanted evidence, so we've been inviting people to our little server where we have the evidence. But then people don't want to listen to the survivors when they're in there and just look at the evidence and conclude it's nothing.
Max wasn't fooling anyone with that approach. Members of the audience that once defended Max were now begging him to either tackle the case professionally or drop it. And you know there's a problem when comments have more likes than the actual video itself. Max's subpar apology was only a ploy to sway public opinion, and it was failing horribly. Pair this with the fact that there were Discord leaks of him threatening legal action against Muda, and it's no wonder why the apology fell flat. With a text reading, "Spencer and I are considering a class action lawsuit against Mudaha for breaching our non-disclosure agreement. He's extremely rich, so the lawsuit seeks $1 million in damages to be distributed between you all." This goes on to show that Max's priorities weren't aligned with solving the case, but rather he was solely set on maximizing personal gain. From the 19th to the 21st of
Holy
January 2024, Slug, Max's former editor, took to YouTube and Reddit to leak footage of Max saying what he truly thought about people like Charlie.
I could literally cancel you, Charlie. I could literally cancel you. And I choose not to.
What the fuck?
It's true though. It's the truth. Like, I'm the friggin' pedo hunter. Like,
watching Max say things like this would lead anyone to the conclusion that he had lost his grip on reality, and assumed his status as quote gave him the power to cancel other creators, something that would only become more apparent. Around the time the leak from Slug went live,
Brother
news
became
broke that an anonymous
delusional.
Discord user had infiltrated Max's private investigation server, leaking all the evidence he was saving for the legal case. Apparently, they were able to enter the server by pretending to be a survivor, and were given full access after signing an NDA.
I know you are dealing with a lot of harassment and going through a lot of stuff. Is it possible you could invite me to the Discord server where the other victims are? I want to share my story in a place where I can feel safe and not be doxxed or harassed. Yes, we can invite you. Thank you. Again, you have done so much for the victims. I'm blessed to have met you, and I hope Camden can finally face justice. For the safety of the server, may I please ask for your full name? My name is Max Stryker. It's a pleasure to meet you. They give a voice message and then say Jamie Fields, which is a fake name. But that's the only verification that Max has done to allow some random shitter in his Discord server to see all of the evidence. All you have to do is just play the part decently well, say that you were fucking abused and diddled by Camden, give a fake full name, and boom, you see all of the fucking evidence that he's protecting for the legal case, and then spreads it out to the internet to see.
As you'd expect, Max was flagging videos that mentioned the leak to cover up this blunder.
Mama Max, in his evidence Discord server, is now flagging and telling his whole server, which granted, his server is probably only 20 people, 30 people max, but he's now enforcing his whole server to go report and flag it seems like my VOD, it seems like Mr. Sen's VOD. Anyone who's talking about the leaks, he's now reporting or flagging and outright calling for that. Seems like this guy spends more time fucking doing this shit than actually trying to catch Camden on his case.
There was no way Max could feasibly hide this fiasco, as more and more of his secrets were going public with each passing day. On the 3rd of February 2024, Nicholas returned to cover the Mama Max situation through the upload titled, "This video will make you hate Mama Max," which brought forward an obscene amount of damning information from Max's past. Alongside his coverage of Max's blunders from the previous weeks, Nicholas detailed how Max maliciously destroyed the career of a former friend and supporter, Night Doc.
Night Docs, or Jim, was a proud Mama Max supporter during the Pick a Side YouTube campaign, so much that he called in to actually debate me 2 years ago and defend Max's character from scrutiny. Like Max and many of their mutuals, Jim is a video essayist who makes long-form content. He was also firmly in the friend group of Max, Nexpo, Mutahar, and others just a few short years ago. Now I'm sure you're wondering, Nick, what happened to this up-and-coming YouTuber with all of these widely successful friends and connections? The reality was, Night Docs was cast out of his social circle because Max spread rumors that he was a bad father, a creep to women, and worst of all, a pedophile.
It seems Max didn't limit the predator accusations to just his enemies, but also his friends. You might be wondering why Max never made these accusations public given his previous job title. Well, it was because he didn't have any evidence to back it up besides his testimony.
So regarding Jim, there were two specific stories that Max really harped on when it came to Night Docs, at least whenever we had our little, falling out. So Max was convinced that Jim was this pedophile creep, and he backed up this claim with firstly a story about an inappropriate conversation that he claimed Jim had with a minor. As it turned out, this person was not a minor at all. They had told Jim their age at one point, which I believe was 25 or so. I'm not entirely sure, but that's that whole story that Max always preferred to back whenever he would call Jim a predator. There was another story that led to more of Max believing Jim to be, a creep. And it involved one trip to a restaurant that he and Jim had way back when Max was living with Jim. Apparently Jim was, making moves on the waitress and, continuously hitting on her, and he just wouldn't stop. And it made this, situation or this dinner that they were at very tense and awkward. Basically, every single time that I was with Max during the time when we had our, falling out, you could call it, Max would perpetuate this narrative that Jim was this creep, and he would always refer back to these two stories, and I guess I just never really vetted them.
In regards to Jim or Night Docs, there were two allegations, one of them which had come from Max, allegedly, in amongst a friend group, about him not being necessarily the best dad. There were two key things. One of them was him being asleep most days, and then the other was that Max would have to step in and feed his children cereal or whatever else was in the house. This is something that I heard, again, not from Max, but through our internal friend group. And while this one definitely raised some questions about, okay, you know, gotta be attentive if you're the dad, it wasn't necessarily the most serious thing. However, what was more serious was the allegation where he had allegedly started unzipping himself in front of a minor, exposing himself over a Discord video call. Now, I actually confronted Jim about this one specifically because I wasn't exactly, I need to know the bottom of this truth, or I need to understand or at least get his side, because obviously I met the person in reality. Me and my wife confronted him, and in this situation, Jim obviously categorically denied that he had done anything, but I didn't have any evidence for or against Jim, and you know, in spite of all that, I still decided to, you know, hold back my connection, not talk as much anymore. We weren't necessarily the most talkative people anyways, but this absolutely sealed the deal.
Max was not just making baseless accusations, but he was making them on a friend that defended, housed, and fed him for months. Accusations that separated him from his friend group and almost pushed him over the edge.
When I lost all my friends, I just went away from YouTube and all that. Like, I just lost all of my self-esteem. I just felt like I was like irredeemable. There was something wrong with me that I just, nobody would ever want to be around me. And I had no idea what it was that I did, but I was like, I'm obviously just a piece of shit.
So you'd say this impacted your career, I guess?
Absolutely, it impacted my career. I completely fell off. I ended up hospitalized. Like, I genuinely ended up hospitalized. I came within hours of doing something very permanent and very stupid. It was the last straw.
To add a cherry on top, Nicholas included the full Discord call he and Muda had with Max, which really allows you to see how deviously Max used his past credibility and platform to justify his unethical behavior. The call started normally, with Muda and Nicholas trying to get to the bottom of the Candom case. However, once they inquired on why evidence hadn't been shared with other creators, Max said,
Yes, so I would like to explain my position on this.
Sure.
So the purpose of the NDA is to protect the survivors. Like, that is why the NDA protects their anonymity and for them to be able to give the approval of what they want to share. But we do want to like let people in and see like what is occurring here. It's just my priority has been to protect the survivors.
Okay, but you do understand, say Charlie looks at everything, hypothetical, right? Charlie can't then go, guys, there's a predator on the loose. I saw it on Discord. That wouldn't be sufficient for his audience.
Max then goes on to affirm that witness testimony is more than enough for backing serious allegations.
I am just trying to get the word out that this is Camden Gerard Davis. This is what the accusations against him are. And it's also, you can also like, we are fine saying this is all alleged. Like, we are fine if...
Well, you can't just say it's alleged now.
No, because... Yeah, 100%. That's not...
Yeah.
I'm fine doing it because I trust them. But all I wanted to do...
But you said you didn't review most of the evidence besides Spencer, though.
I reviewed the evidence. I just haven't had the context as to what it is pertaining to.
Even claiming that other creators have made similar allegations with less evidence.
I hope it's clear why I'm so willing to just call him a cult leader and a predator. I feel there's enough here. People have gone by with a lot less. Even Charlie has called people without any hard evidence.
Who specifically?
Who was it? Was it Sneeko?
Bro, I mean, Sneeko was literally defending the shit out of cuties. Let's not pretend. Come on.
All right, well, that's my argument. Like,
you know how many clips of him on Kick would exist of him saying minors? Or come on, like.
That's, I mean, it's comparable to Anthony Field with multiple testimonies against him. It's comparable.
Basing such a serious case on accusations alone was a recipe for disaster, and Max was too blinded by glory and money to see it. Now, he's lost both things he valued the most. Max's entire career was based on the fact that he was going after the most vile predators on the internet. It was the reason the YouTube community overlooked his of power and desperate attempts to signal boost his channel by threatening larger creators, all while giving thousands of dollars each month to fund his supposed one-man assault on predators. Unfortunately, once Max lost that air of authority, people became less willing to give him a pass for doxing people and relying on testimony as his sole piece of evidence. Ironically, Max got the response from Charlie, but it would cost him his reputation, credibility, and over 50,000 subscribers. Considering the fact that each day brings more and more revelations about who Max truly is, it's safe to say he has had a dramatic fall from grace, but is nowhere near the bottom. But Max isn't the only one faking his content. On a less serious note, Eric was found faking his videos. Click on screen to find out how.
No.
The moment Maximilian Miss decided to manipulate his audience into attacking Charlie's stream for no reason marked the beginning of the end for his very successful YouTube career. From being exposed as the ringleader for one of YouTube's most toxic communities, all the way to deleting his million-sub YouTube channel and disappearing for over a year. The name Maximilian Miss has gone down in internet history as a creator who weaponized his platform for selfish amusement and paid a very hefty price. But how does a beloved Fortnite YouTuber known for making light-hearted trolling videos
In here, go get the car. There's a car in here. Spare car, go. Oh! Bye!
Wait! No!
Bye, bye.
become one of the most hated YouTubers on the platform? Well, it all came crumbling down with just one Penguin Zero video. Hi, I'm the Internet Anarchist. I create weekly YouTube documentaries, and today we'll be investigating the role Charlie played in the massive downfall of Maximilian Miss, YouTube's most hated troll. Max created his main channel, Maximilian Miss, on the 24th of August 2011. However, his story on YouTube didn't truly start until the 3rd of March 2013, when he uploaded his first video playing the Half-Life 2 mod Hidden in a video titled People Raging Over Friendly Fire. Despite not even having a mic yet, many of the traits that would go on to define his career were present in the first few videos. His ability to provoke other players to draw out a reaction, and a passion for shooter-type games took center stage as he transitioned from Half-Life 2 over to Team Fortress 2. While these video formats brought Max some attention, it wasn't enough for him, as he stopped uploading on the 23rd of May 2013. It wouldn't be until the 25th of September 2014 that a certain indie game named Five Nights at Freddy's rejuvenated Max's will to create content. Max didn't know it yet, but that game would go on to make for up to 90% of his uploads going forwards, taking him from under 1,000 subscribers to over 10,000 subscribers by the start of 2015. Throughout the year, Max didn't hesitate to make the most of Five Nights at Freddy's meteoric rise in popularity, with videos such as Five Nights at Freddy's New Chica Model and New Bonnie Jump Scare. He even purchased a microphone to further improve the quality of his videos.
Is this real or fake? What the hell?
For a while, Max enjoyed a degree of success that he only could have dreamed for at the start of his channel, but as Five Nights at Freddy's popularity came and went, so did the growth of his channel. Every subsequent upload brought in fewer and fewer views, until he had to abandon the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise entirely in late 2015. Once again, Max was in desperate need of a popular game franchise that would bring in consistent viewership, and with that being said, he spent over a year searching for one. Luckily for Max, a newly released team-based multiplayer first-person shooter called Overwatch would provide him with the engagement he very much so craved. His first upload centered around Overwatch was titled Losing My 10 Placement Matches in Overwatch, Road to Bronze, published on the 8th of December 2016. The video brought back Max's trolling nature from his TF2 days, and this time it was even worse.
So from the thumbnail and the title of this video, you probably guessed that I'm trying to reach the lowest rank ever. And what better way to do this than to lose all 10 of my first matchmaking matches.
Throughout the video, Max would do more than just trying to lose on purpose, but also trying to actively provoke his teammates.
Max, can you stop trolling please, man? Just play. Oh, I'm not trolling. I'm playing serious. Where are the enemies? I'm new to the game. I don't know who's an enemy or who's my friend. Is this guy my enemy? Is this guy my enemy or is this guy my friend? I think that guy's my enemy.
The video was a massive hit with fans.
Yay,
and garnered over
fucking
500,000
finally,
views.
holy shit.
Naturally, this encouraged Max to continue with trolling other players for views.
I might
From
be
December
done. I'm so
2016
fucking
to
tired.
July 2017.
It's fucking... it's 4 in the morning. Or wait, no, it's... What? Could have swore last time I looked at the time it was 3:40 something. Weird. Oh, man. $9,000, goddamn. 470. $470. The fuck? Okay. Alright. Yeah, I'm just gonna whatever. Fuck, do I want to do one more? Fuck. I'm so tired. Fuck it, why not? I'm gonna look for a different fucking video though, cause I don't really give two shits about whatever the fuck this is.
Was number 2, who just casually took a pack of cigarettes and lit it up like it's nothing. His hair out and cuts everything inside. When rich people visited the island, they would take advantage of the poor and threaten their livelihood.
Wait,
so
what
Giovanni
island?
decided to teach all his boys. Is this brother pissing on the gay folks? What the hell is that he lift?
What
Is that
the
a freaking
hell?
mattress on top of a mattress? If you guys get traumatized from this or develop any mental illness, blame yourselves for asking for this. This is Baki going to prison. Let's go. Now, Baki has kidnapped the freaking president of America, not to demand money, hoes, or anything like that from him. He just wants to be sent to the most dangerous prison in all of the world. Why? I don't know yet. But he ends up in a jail cell, goes through the legal system, and is eventually transported across the Arizona desert to the place he's been dying to visit. You see, while regular people go to vacation,
I wish I would've just went to bed.
Baki's type of vacation is going to
I'm so
dangerous
tired.
prisons full of crackheads. Once they get through the gate, Baki is walked into a room where he is told to take off them clothes. I ain't about to show y'all a bunch of naked men, because that'd be like showing y'all heaven. But they take his DNA print and everything. They even get him an MRI scan, and eventually he ends up in front of the warden here, who is like, damn, okay, yeah, this is definitely the main character, and sends him to a place where only the most dangerous criminals are kept. In this hallway, they got hobos, homos, and Lowe's worst employees. Once they get past all of this, the place goes from insane asylum to a room meant for royalty.
Oh shit.
When he walks through the door, he encounters a man.
Where
Now, a
is-
lot of you probably already know this distinguished gentleman right here. He's Biscuit Oliver Oil Up. Baki was here because he wanted to beat on Biscuit Oliver Oil Up, so he can level up and beat his father. Biscuit wasn't about to let Baki cut in line, cause in this prison, a lot of people want his head. But you see, Baki here doesn't care about no rules, so he punches Biscuit Oliver Oil in the face, but the dude's face is made out of titanium. Biscuit was only looking forward to finding someone who goes by number 2, so eventually Baki is sent to a cell with multiple people in it. Instead of meeting a booty warrior, he meets not Iron Mike Tyson, who tells him to hit the hay. But you see, Baki is like, oh, I see, so you're number 2. But nah, not Iron Mike Tyson isn't even making it to number 10. An old man tells them to go to sleep or else they'll wake up this big fella right here, who isn't going to be too happy to be woken up. The next day, the bunk boys are getting dressed. Baki finds this NBA player telling him to cover up his testicles. The only issue is, this isn't number 2. Instead, it's this guy who's in the freaking broom closet. Turns out, this is number 2, who likes to sleep in the closet, cause he's a warrior, and warriors don't lie down. Now, I love this quote. If you want to lie down, you can lie down all you want once you're dead. Since Baki wants to get at Oliver Oyup, he decides to pick a fight with this man. But a guard tells him to line up to be scolded. The bunk boys and Baki now have to stand in line. The only person who didn't need to was number 2, who just casually took a pack of cigarettes and lit it up like it's nothing. This brother then approached, not I'm Mike Tyson, to ask him what they were having for dinner. Pork and beans. But you see, number 2 doesn't like pork and beans, so just for him, the entire prison prepares him an omelet, while the rest has to eat pork and beans. Now I gotta tell y'all,
What's wrong with
number
pork
2,
and beans?
aka Giovanni, can do whatever he wants in here, even take a guard's pistol. By the way guys, I know it's called Guevara, okay? I just like to call him Giovanni. When a fly landed on the guard's forehead, Giovanni helped out by pointing the gun at him and holstering it back for him. Alright, damn! That is some super gangster activities. But not everyone believes this hype, especially this big man, who wants to experience the life of royalty, and eventually become the top dog in this prison. Now, he is pretty strong, but Giovanni shows him he can turn the spoon into spaghetti, which is even more gangster. The dude flips out, and the guard ends up stepping in, only to be stopped by Giovanni, who's ready to prove why he's a warrior. So he snatches a gun, and says, you know what? Just end it all, man. I can't do this anymore. Just shoot me already, man. Fire away. As the dude was about to fire, Giovanni decided to end this man's entire future generation. The guy who was rolling on the floor gets up like, oh, what the hell did you use? Which is a stupid question, so Giovanni just decides to violate him later at a secluded place. Now, lucky for this big man, Giovanni doesn't have the title of booty warrior. So he hugs the big man, and as the big man tries to give him a wedgie, he for some reason can't. So Giovanni just pimp slap him and pulls out some hair and begins tickling this man's brain. Then he whips his hair out and cuts everything inside. The guy just collapses after this, and as he tries to get up to fight, he just can't. It's over. And Giovanni just walks up to a guard, takes his cigarette packet, and begins smoking. That's gangster right there. The guy who Giovanni was fighting gets executed on the spot.
Jesus.
And back at the cafeteria, Giovanni meets a fanboy, Baki, who also wants the title of number 2. And guard runs over and tries to whip Baki, but his baton gets snatched, and Baki just proves he can do the same thing as Giovanni. But not really, because he gets surrounded and eventually ends up in isolation, with his fingers locked up for this. That's what Baki gets for trying to R-farm. Now, it's eventually lunchtime, and this old man here has brought Baki bread and soup. He was also here to drop some lore about Giovanni, who is the president of some tiny island that we haven't heard of. It must have been Somalia, cause him and his boys were pirates who took over massive ships and took valuables. But one day, this changed. When Giovanni found out that when rich people visited the island, they would take advantage of the poor and threaten their livelihood. So Giovanni decided to teach all his boys how to do one-finger handstands and fight against guns, swords, and nukes. A lot of his boys died in this, but they were now unbreakable. He used this powerful force to declare his small island an independent country. But you see, the country had oil, so the president of America decided, we gotta bring freedom to this island. But one of Giovanni's boys were already here, and was prepared to turn the president of America into a pretzel. He forces the guards to go in timeout, before he forces the president to allow their country to keep their delicious oil. And to really prove that they're not messing around, bro does a one-arm handstand and turns on the TV to show Giovanni visiting his house, his wife, and family. This brother pretty much made himself at home here, and this ain't the president's family anymore. This is Giovanni's. Now that his country was an independent country, he had decided to come to Arizona prison to challenge Oliver Oyup. So pretty much the same reason why Baki was here. Now Giovanni is in the same group as Biscuit Oliver Oyup and Yujiro Hama. The three are always tracked 24/7 cause they're that much of a threat to the world. Hey, why you high school girls gossiping in here? The old man tries to talk back, but he gets smacked, and the guard begins trying to stick his baton in the old man's mouth to teach him a lesson. But Baki isn't about to let this guard here hide his bald ass head from him. The guard, seeing that he's been exposed, is now pissed, so he tries to attack Baki, but gets kicked into the fence. Baki just wanted to make it clear that he wasn't stuck in here with them. They're stuck in here with him. The dude gets his attack dodged before he gets knocked the hell out and almost falls to his death. But Baki, being the good main character he is, saves this man from dying, pulls him up, and as the guard, realizing that he's not him, just decides to retire on the spot. The next day, the boys now have to do hard labor. Baki was really good at this. The only problem is, the pay is hourly, so he's just working really fast, just to be paid the exact same as everyone else. Not Iron Mike Tyson and Baki have gotten really close. Iron Mike is looking forward to getting out, so he can become champion once more. That would be sick. The only problem is, the warden and some dudes are trying to ensure that not Iron Mike Tyson never becomes champion again. To do this, the warden calls a LGBT squadron. These dudes were the ones who were going to kill not Iron Mike Tyson. Now eventually the gay amigos lure not Iron Mike Tyson into the yard, where Mike is ready to go. The only problem is these gay dudes surround him and begin yammering, using talk no jutsu to distract Mike, and punch him straight in the face. And as Mike tries to fight back, he gets tripped, slapped in the face, kicked in the leg, punched in every place possible. Then one of the dudes started running, only to tire Mike Tyson out and kick him right on the head. Now he was on his knees, being beaten like a stray dog. I can't watch this. We need a hero. Mike, after being beaten so badly, runs and backs himself into a corner to hopefully stop these dudes from overwhelming him. Then he proceeded to waste all of his energy doing this. The gay dudes decide, alright, two could play that game, and just proceeded to beat the hell out of Mike Tyson. Like, I just feel bad watching this, y'all, cause this don't get any easier for Mike. Eventually he goes down and one of them decides to begin taking his cheeks. Now we had to watch not Iron Mike Tyson get the living life stomped out of him. Now that Mike was dead, the gay dudes were now about to remove his balls and turn him into one of them. But something comes flying in. Huh? One of them spots something coming. A delusional crackhead who somehow infiltrated the battlefield. Now, the reason why Giovanni here was rolling was because he gets a 100+ stealth bonus. He gets completely dazed afterwards, and brother takes a moment to breathe in the moment before snapping his fingers. Like, huh, I could have whooped all of you right there and then, but I'm not gonna cause I don't want to hurt my fists. Alright, no one is buying that, so they surround him, proceeded to jump. Oh, what is this brother? Is this brother pissing on the gay folks? Oh, hell nah! After relieving himself, Giovanni decided to take a quick nap in his piss circle right in front of them. They didn't like him R-farming, so they proceeded to beat and stomp him out for a couple of minutes. But you see, this man right here is a diamond! So he gets up and proceeded to conjure the freaking wind from the Pacific Sea. Is this brother the last airbender? He now looks like a freaking diamond and was now about to mess up these dudes while looking like his makeup got done by a chimpanzee. The gay folks surround him quick, but Giovanni just asks, why is one of them up there? The others used this opportunity to attack Giovanni, but this dude spun back so fast and decided to unleash the most devastating punch I've ever seen. Like, this dude was sent flying 100 feet. The other gay dudes pissed themselves and ran. Well, aside for one who just gave up on life. Wow, that was gangster! Giovanni got the guards to take care of the rest, while he said what's up to not Iron Mike Tyson. Mike was really grateful, and once they got back to the bunk, he was about to give Giovanni a happy ending on the house. But hey, it's all good, brother. No need for that. Why is Baki on his knees?
Sorry, but I'm gonna have to say no. I won't be your boyfriend.
But what Giovanni will do is fight. Did someone say fight? The freaking door to their cell begins twisting like paper, and here comes Oliver Oilup, who had just torn the entire door off. He was here to check out Giovanni and everyone here. The two began talking about warrior stuff. You know, like sleeping in closets instead of beds, pissing on your opponents, stuff like that. But the difference between the two was Oliver Oilup was into women. That's why Giovanni will lose. Oliver begins flexing that he's not single and he has done PP training, which gets Giovanni to attack him. But Baki steps in, thinking that Talk no Jutsu will work, only to get two fists to the face and looking like he's a guy on the streets who's been drinking his life away. Now this guy Oliver was a freak, like he was sniffing his woman's napkin or whatever this is in front of everyone. Then he says, "Hey, y'all wanna hit?" Like it's a blunt. Oh hell nah! This set Oliver Oyup running to clean his brother's spit off. Now we get some lore on his girlfriend. She's here in the prison, here with him, and she's supposedly the most beautiful woman ever. But no one here has actually laid eyes on her, so Giovanni just assumes that it's just a lie Oliver Oyup made to flex on the single homies, right? I don't think anything is straight about Baki. Soon enough, Giovanni will fight Oliver Oyup. When he does, he'll open this jar, which he says has the spirit of his homeland in it. Inside holds the courage to be a warrior. The way it was obtained was by a small boy who stood in front of a massive storm, collecting the will and hope of the people. After the storm, the entire land was destroyed, and a boy approached him, pointing to the highest peak. Seeing this, Giovanni would take it and only use it whenever he needed the courage to destroy his enemies. The next day, everyone is outside. The entire prison and the guards were ready to witness the fight between Oliver Oyup and Giovanni. And here he comes, R farming and of course grabbing his jar. Bruh, put that damn jar down. Now comes Oliver, who is, what the hell? Is he carrying a freaking queen-sized bed? That looks super heavy. But hey, his girlfriend might be on it. And I'm ready to see how beautiful she actually is. Cause he's been yammering about her
Hurry up and get this thing started already.
What the hell is that behemoth? Is that a freaking mattress on top of a mattress? Oh my lord, Oliver. Your girlfriend is a blue whale. She throws a cigarette at him and spits directly on his eye. Oh hell no. And she's nasty? Oliver then turns to fight Giovanni.
Oh, she nasty,
And just by
alright.
flexing his muscles hard, he rips his tuxedo off and jumps out of it, leaving his clothes hanging. While Oliver wasn't about to lose in front of his blue whale, Giovanni wasn't about to lose after opening this jar. And the entire freaking ocean came straight into his face. Huh? That was it? Alright, I was hoping that it was gonna be more epic, but I hope that it's gonna be useful to Giovanni, cause Oliver might have the better reason to win. Giovanni pulls out a towel, and the two, not wanting to hold each other's hands, cause you know, that's kinda gay, hold each end of the handkerchief with each of their fingers. Giovanni punches first, but you see, whoever lets go likes femboys. So Oliver Oyup holds on tight, and as Giovanni lands punch after punch, knocking him over, Giovanni realizes, oh crap, this fool is heavy as hell! Now Giovanni was the one barely holding on. Oliver got up and began roasting the hell out of Giovanni for using two hands. So to make it fair, he just changes it to an even harder grip. Giovanni said, yeah, you're right, and follows along, but he pulls out some of his hair and blows it into Oliver's eye. This blinded Oliver and allowed Giovanni to tackle and suplex him into the sky. It almost got Oliver to lose his grip, and once he lands, he was holding the towel for dear life. His girlfriend also roasted him for this, and this was enough to break Oliver's heart, and kicked in the face. A strike to the neck dazed him further, and an elbow had Oliver clutching the handkerchief like a heartbroken teenager does to their ex. After receiving a beating worse than a son of an alcoholic father, he said, "Hey, look at me. I'm cool. I'm barely holding it." Wanting to be cool too, Giovanni also joins in and holds the handkerchief like this before delivering an uppercut. The two began beating the brakes off each other, and Oliver has landed exactly 0 punches. So to get some revenge, he slams Giovanni into the ground, and surprisingly, Giovanni was still holding onto the handkerchief. Now someone finally said it. "This fight boring as fuck!" Baki had to say it. So while Oliver was still fighting Giovanni, Baki stole his blue whale. This got Oliver fuming, bro. And he lets go of the handkerchief and starts yelling. But this girl was like, "What the hell are you doing? You're just holding on to a towel while smacking each other. That's not manly at all." Oh lord. And did she just kiss Baki? Oliver just loses it, but he gets kicked hard. And now he's about to go down. Especially with this one hard slap. Giovanni then began doing this ear-tickling technique. But as he's about to pull, Oliver grabs his arm and unleashes all of his jealousy and rage straight into Giovanni's face. Rest in peace, guys. Once the fight ends, Baki decided to raise up Oliver's girl, but he's like, you know what? She's yours, man. Just make sure your back doesn't break on the way out. As everyone is cheering for Oliver, Giovanni begins delusionally singing and dying on the ground. He can barely stand, and before long though, he gets up and puts on makeup. Now that he looks like a goth girl version of Yujiro Hama, with a big handprint on his chest, he walks towards Oliver before charging like a meth head and kicking Oliver straight in the stomach, sending him onto the ground. Now the crowd completely switches and cheers for Giovanni, until my guy Oliver does this and jumps back up. He explained that he was going easy, in which Giovanni started sucking on his fingers, like, give me some bruh. But as he goes to attack Oliver, he gets smacked into the ground. Now, Oliver pretty much died after this. At least I thought so until he began to stand. Because you see, he has a reason to win. All his people were starving, and in need of him. So remembering why he was here, he prepares to finish things with Oliver. It's a good day to die. But you see, Oliver wasn't gonna go easy. He was preparing to unleash a punch so powerful, it got Giovanni already rolling his eyes back and being zesty as hell. He approaches Oliver and then points to his tuxedo, which was still up for some reason. This was because he was making some bullcrap up to knock Oliver into the air and just nuke the earth. But you see, he's so powerful and awesome that the president shows up and says, oh, here's the key to the city and the custody to my kids. Yujiro also shows up, and what is going on? Yujiro says he is no match for Giovanni. Oh yeah, this brother's dreaming. Turns out, brother got folded so badly, he got stuck mid-air and was knocked into another dimension where he won. Rest in peace our guy Giovanni, bro. Oliver has gained a lot of respect for Giovanni, but the person who won was the man with the biggest muscles. Now, Oliver must be as delusional as Giovanni because he begins saying that he's been holding back all of his muscles. If he unleashed it all, he would become a Godzilla-sized meatball. No one believes him though, and when this brother says he eats 100,000 calories a day, he might actually be telling the truth. This is Baki after all. Alright, chill bruh, you're not him. Since Baki doesn't believe him, he lifts him up and slaps him across the entire arena. Before things get heated though, he apologizes and says, Allah, I'm not a behemoth, but my girl is. That's why I built these muscles, so I can carry her fat ass around. I don't even know how bro is carrying her without the entire earth collapsing. But Oliver does leave while stealing Giovanni's theme song. The next day, Giovanni is gone, and he left some of his country's currency for Oliver to find. There was also a hole in the closet he was sleeping in, so he was probably capping about sleeping while standing. On that very island and country, everything was looking a lot better. Giovanni got back and was back to cutting wood with the boys. Although he did just get folded, he fought like an absolute warrior.
Okay.
This is the simpiest, goofiest, most down bad guy in all of anime. He tried taking someone's girl, but ended up getting passed around by the entire anime. Even his father joined in on the whooping. Since I don't have a goofy tier list, Ali is gonna have to be ranked in the menace tier list. And to do so, we're gonna have to start where it all began. This is Ali Jr.'s father, and while he was out running with his team, he looked back to find them gone. He then smelled something in the air and heard someone calling for him. When he looked back, he saw this man Yujiro standing right behind him. Yujiro would then walk up to him and stare at him in a challenging way. Yujiro's presence would make Ali put his guard up for the first time, and as Ali went for a jab, he thought that he let in the jab, but Yujiro just stood there, out of range. As he went for a couple more jabs, Yujiro would just dodge all of it. He realized that Yujiro's built different and that the skill difference is way too immense. Despite this, Ali still ready to throw down. They both begin squaring off, in which Yujiro would head towards him. Despite managing to dodge Ali's jabs, Yujiro still got scratched. As Ali went for another jab, Yujiro just disappeared and laid on the ground. This confused Muhammad Ali, but before he can realize what's happening, Yujiro grabbed his ankles and threw him into the air. Luckily though, Yujiro caught Ali and showed him that he really is that guy. After this, Ali would become inspired to perfect his art. Yujiro and him pretty much become best friends, in which one day, Ali introduced his son Ali Jr. to Yujiro. He began explaining his life away, but suddenly Ali Jr. started thinking that he was that guy and began attacking Yujiro. But Yujiro just flicked his ass away, which sent him flying. His forehead was bleeding, but despite this, his father Ali still encouraged him. Now, before we get to the part where he got jumped by the Avengers team, we have to let him build up his aura.
Raise your arms.
Baki's girl Kozue discovers that he's on the verge of dying, so she takes him to the hospital. His girl sits down in the room worried, but the doctor comes in and explains that Baki might actually die. Kozue becomes so struck that she runs out of the hospital crying and moping. Now, how is this relevant to Ali? Well, this guy approaches Kozue with this goofy grin on his face like, this is my chance. So he sits down and begins comforting her. Dude tries to act smart by saying, oh, are you crying because someone you love is in the hospital? Bruh, was that not obvious? Kozue begins crying like,
OMG! How did he know? He knows me so well.
He then gives Kozue this disgusting pickle looking thing and tries to walk off like a main character. But his goofy ass had to go back to Kozue for directions. He soon shows up at this boxing club and the strongest guy there gets on his knees like, oh my king, you're here. So Ali soon undressed and got into the ring. This dude sprints at him and tries to roundhouse kick him, while Ali just punches him in the face and lays his ass out. Dude begins powering up like, I see red when I get mad, and tries to tackle Ali, but Ali uppercuts him and then finishes him. He lays him to sleep. After Ali got his first victim, he decides to meet up with the biggest menace in all of anime, Yujiro Hama. So after arguing and yapping about the most random stuff, he begins challenging Yujiro and bouncing like an Easter bunny. As Yujiro steps forward, Ali jabs at him, but Yujiro just crushes his glove and begins yapping.
Alright. Fucking, I'm going to bed. Holy shit.